Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto fakes his death because of his parents part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. October 10th, the night of the Kyuubi attack. Konoha Hospital. As the Kyuubi bared down on the hidden village of Konoha, a young red-headed kunoichi was in the throes of labor. Aya. Itai. Son of a bitch. Where the hell is my husband when I need him? The irate woman roared as another contraction racked her body. Dr. Yamagawa, the doctor in charge of the delivery, found it prudent to speak up. Gomen Uzumaki-san, but Yandame-sama is preparing for the attack of the Kyuubi. Said beast was responsible for the pickle Kushina was in right now. The Kyuubi's aura has caused Kushina to go into premature labor, more than a month before she was actually due. The aura and the rough labor were also causing complications to pop up. Kushina started to internally bleed. Assistant Dr. Tomodachi, in charge of trying to keep Kushina amongst the living, couldn't stop the bleeding. There would be nothing for the legendary slug Sannin to heal. So where was she? 7 doors down in the same maternity ward. Gyahh. I swear to Kami, you got me intentionally drunk so you could do this to me. She screamed through a contraction as she had the hand of the father in a death grip. Luckily Tsunade was in too much pain to use chakra to enhance her strength, so he only had a couple broken knuckles instead of pulp for a hand so far. You know that's not true, Tsunadeheim, but given the chance to change it, I'd do it all over again. He chimed in with a hint of pride as her contractions started to fade. Tsunade calmed her breathing and looked into his eyes before speaking with nothing but seriousness written across her face. This is it, Jiraiya. No more peeping. No more women. No more gallivanting all across the elemental nations for your spy network, or whatever. Just you, me, and the baby, she stated with finality. The white-haired sage cracked a smile while looking back into her eyes. Yup, this is it, Tsunade. No more binge drinking. No more gambling, and definitely no more running. Just you, me and the baby. Promise. She managed to smile as well. Promise, ugh. As soon as this kid stops tearing up my insides. She managed to say through clenched teeth as another contraction racked through her body. Albeit that Tsunade's labor was premature, it was only by a couple weeks, and the battle-hardened kunoichi was doing much better than her fellow mother-to-be. Tsunade's assistant Shizun popped up from her position at the end of the birthing table and reassured her master. This last set of contractions should be it, Tsunade-sama. Please bear through the pain. And went back to her previous position. Jiraiya, seeing this, pouted. Why does Shizun get the really good job of staring at you while I get YOWCH? He hollered as a crack announced another broken knuckle. Tsunade glared at him. Damn it, I forgot to add your over-the-top perversion to the deal. She growled as the contraction lessened, just for another to follow, making for a horrible time for a comeback. Yeah? And I forgot physical abuse. But you don't hear me, bitchy YOW. That was my last good knuckle. Jiraiya cried out as Tsunade broke his last knuckle in the hand she was gripping, confirmed by the dull crunch. Just be glad it wasn't something more important I was squeezing. Tsunade howled as she started pushing and breathing Leman style. Shizun watched from below as a blood-covered bulb started pushing through. I can see the head crowning Tsunade-sama. These last few pushes should do it. Shizun prompted the mother-to-be. With her apprentice's encouragement, Tsunade screamed through her last few pushes whilst Jiraiya started going cross-eyed as the vice-like for that was Tsunade's grip started mashing the bits and pieces in his hand together. Finally, the baby was born. While it was a couple weeks premature, it was still as lively and vocal as it started crying. Shizun placed the infant in his mother's arms. Whilst she cut the umbilical cord and cleaned up the remains, Tsunade looked at her crying son, while Jiraiya shook off the pain of his broken hand while doing the same. He's beautiful, Tsunade spoke through her fatigue. He definitely is, Haim. Looks like he got your cute nose out of the deal too. Jiraiya agreed with his partner in parenthood. Tsunade looked at her son's nose. That does not look like my nose, she cut off her declaration as the baby made a face while scrunching his nose up. Tsunade's sweat dropped as Jiraiya grinned in victory. The parents looked at the rest of the features on the baby. The writhing bundle sported bright yellow hair and bright blue eyes. Tsunade decided to speak up. He almost could pass for a miniature Minato. I know he got the hair from my mother, but where the heck did he get such bright blue eyes? Tsunade pondered. Who knows? I don't have a very good memory of my parents, so he could have gotten them from my side. Though his hair consistency is definitely from me. Once he hits his teens, I'm sure he'll sport his old man's impressive mane. Jiraiya finished as Tsunade narrowed her eyes at the sage. No way in hell I'm letting my son grow that hedgehog you call a hairstyle. Jiraiya looked shocked at this. But it's key in doing needle jizo when he becomes as good as his old man. Tsunade countered his statement. Bullshit. Sensei can use it too and he has short hair. Jiraiya crossed his arms as he pouted. You're just jealous of my awesome hair. Before Tsunade could retort, Shizun decided to break into the debate. Ayano, if you don't mind, I'd like to take the baby to the nursery to get him cleaned up and do a diagnostic. The parents turned to the forgotten assistant and looked at her before looking at the baby still covered in Tsunade. Tsunade gave the baby over to her apprentice with a bashful look on her face. The two new parents were left in the silent room, listening to the now audible sounds of the fight against the king of Bija little more than 2 miles away from the village. Tsunade looked to Jiraiya with concern. Is it safe to be here with the Kyuubi looming closer to Konoha? I can feel its rank chakra from here and it's not even close to the village yet. Jiraiya put a reassuring hand on her shoulder as he tried to quell her worries. Don't worry, Haim. Minato said he thought of a way to stop it. Apparently he's been holed up in his office for the last hour working on it. She gave him a questioning look. Shouldn't you be helping him? Jiraiya smiled and gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I have faith in the Gaki. He has surpassed me after all. If he needed help from me, he wouldn't hesitate to ask. Besides, what kind of father would I be if I didn't help see my son into the world? Jiraiya beamed during the last part. Hearing this, Tsunade couldn't help but be reminded. Speaking of fathers, I wonder how Kushina is holding up considering what she went through. I'm surprised she survived what happened at all. Jiraiya gave a thoughtful look. Don't know. She's a strong girl, but I'll check up on her once we're Tsunade-sama. Jiraiya was cut off by the desperate scream of Shizun. Kushina Uzumaki's room. Earlier, Kushina was not doing too well. Actually, she was pretty much critical. Complications due to basically dragging herself out of hell, and the Kyuubi's chakra bearing down on her meant her life was fading. But if Kushina was one thing, it was stubborn. Damn stubborn. She was determined to deliver this baby whether it meant her life was forfeit or not. With every little bit of strength she could muster, she battled on through her last few pushes and finally brought her child into the world stillborn. Kushina's look of accomplishment turned to one of worry as she heard no crying. Dr. Yamagawa worked frantically to try and revive the baby, making sure nothing was blocking its air passageway to chakra stimulation of the heart, yet it was all for naught. Doctor? Doctor, what's wrong? Why can't I hear my baby? A fading Kushina asked, fearing the worst. The doctor looked sadly at the would-be mother and confirmed her fears. I'm sorry, Kushina-san, he didn't make it. Kushina's will to live shattered as she started crying, the last vestiges of life leaving her. And no, my baby. No, it wasn't as supposed to be like this, Minato. Her eyelids grew heavy as she uttered her last words. Dr. Tomodachi saw her dropping vitals and immediately tried to stabilize her. Shit! We're losing her! He yelled to the other doctor as her heart monitor flatlined. He immediately started resuscitation, but Dr. Yamagawa knew it was hopeless with the Kyuubi so close. He pulled her heart monitor and motioned for the assistant to stop. It's hopeless. There's no way to revive her in this situation. Tomodachi looked at him, and knew as well. They wrote down the times of death and Yamagawa left with Kushina's stillborn son to clean up the body for the coroner when they called him. He took the infant body to a room across from the nursery/viewing room and cleaned it up as best he could, when all of a sudden Dr. Tomodachi, who was supposed to do the same for Kushina's body, burst into the room and immediately blurted out, "We need another baby." His face had a look of absolute fear on it. Dr. Yamagawa looked at him dumbfounded. What the hell are you talking about? Tomodachi, still frantic, continued his hurried explanation. Yandame-sama came into Kushina-san's room to see how the delivery went, so I had to break the bad news about her. He looked ready to kill right before he asked for his son, so I told him I would get him. Yamagawa looked horrified at Tomodachi. You idiot! His son is dead. Why didn't you tell him? Tomodachi immediately retorted. Then you go tell him. Hell no, then we need another baby. Yamagawa looked at him with doubt. Where the hell are we going to get another baby? It's not like we're delivering many of them at the hospital right now. Most of the other pregnant women were moved to the Hokage monument after Kushina's problems. Not only that, it would have to look like Kushina or the Yandame. So considering how rare redheads are around here, where the hell do we find a just-born blonde baby boy? Tomodachi noticed Yamagawa's line of sight and turned to see what caught his attention. Across from the room, in the windowed nursery of the maternity ward, was a raven-haired woman carrying a newborn, blonde, baby and setting it in one of the cribs after washing it. She looked through the cabinets, trying to find something, before muttering something with an annoyed look and walking off to another part of the hospital wing to find what she was looking for. Tomodachi turned back to look at Yamagawa. The same time Yamagawa did the same. Both of them stared at each other for only a second before bolting for the nursery with the stillborn Namikaze underarm. Shizun couldn't believe she had to go on a scavenger hunt just to find the baby something to wear. You would think the best hospital in the shinobi world would be better stocked, she grumbled to herself until she heard the distant rumbles and roars of the heated battle with the Kyuubi. On the other hand, considering current events, I should be grateful the hospital is even here. She mused about the giant fox demon being held off by the brave men and women of the Konoha shinobi forces. She had no illusion as to why the hospital was pretty much deserted. With all the medic needs close to the front lines to tend to the injured, how few the Bijou would leave, and a majority of the civilian doctors with the civilians in the depths of the Hokage monument. Only a few straggler civilian doctors were tending the hospital and even fewer with the use of medical jutsu. Which is why Tsunade's group delivered the baby by themselves, not that Tsunade would trust her baby to anyone else besides her own apprentice. Coming out of her thoughts, Shizun finally located a supply closet in the maternity ward with what she was looking for. Grabbing up the blankets and pajamas in one arm, she shut the door and walked back to the nursery while her thoughts changed to her current situation. With Tsunade's and Jiraiya's new son, they would both finally settle down. She hated to think this way, but she was happy that Jiraiya got her master pregnant. No more running around Fire Country, evading debts collectors. Shizun thought to herself as she opened the doors to the nursery. I might even be able to get a job here and start my own. Shizun's thought process ceased immediately as she looked upon the pale, unmoving form of the baby. Instantly knowing something was horribly wrong, she dropped the bundle she was carrying and ran over to the crib. Seeing the baby wasn't breathing, she quickly activated the Mystic Palm Jutsu to begin diagnosis and resuscitation. Confirming cardiac arrest as well, she quickly tried to resuscitate the baby. Panic and frustration built up at the failing attempt to revive the baby until Shizun could only think of one option. Tsunade-sama. The fact that she had just been through 4 hours of labor was lost on Tsunade after hearing her apprentice scream. She bolted straight out of the bed and raced to the nursery with Jiraiya close on her tails. What she was met with when she got there made her heart drop like a stone as she heard, "Oh Kami no," from Jiraiya behind her. Her face turned from worried to horrified. Shizun was still trying frantically to resuscitate the baby. Her baby. Shizun's head shot up, the baby stopped breathing and went into cardiac arrest. "I need help," she screamed in panic. Tsunade shot over to the baby faster than a Hiroshi and took over for the faltering apprentice. "What happened? You were only gone for a few minutes." The Sannin shouted in frustration and dread. "I don't know. I was gone for less than 2 minutes trying to find something for him to wear, and by the time I got back he was like this. It doesn't make any sense. I've never seen an infant's well-being go from lively to this that fast," Shizun replied, looking on helplessly along with Jiraiya. It was then the worried Toad Sage paled upon coming up with the most possible, yet horrifying explanation, the Kyuubi's chakra. If it can make a woman go into premature labor, he let the sentence hang. The two medics were wide-eyed with despair. If it was the Kyuubi's chakra, then there was no way to possibly. Tsunade clenched her teeth so hard, they felt as if they would break, and her face contorted into pure anger and determination. "No! Damn it, no! I'm not giving up yet. I already lost 2 of my loved ones, I'm not going to lose a third." And with that the healing chakra she had positioned over the baby surged to twice what it was originally as Tsunade put her all into it. "Jiraiya, grab a defibrillator." Jiraiya flew back to the delivery room and yanked the defib unit from the corner of the room. He then rushed back, the wheels on the machine hardly touching the floor. Handing it off to Shizun, she prepped the machine and pressed the child-sized paddles to the chest of the baby. "Clear!" The baby's body jumped from the shock. Tsunade checked for a heartbeat. "Nothing, again." She hollered as she kept the green chakra flowing into the baby, oxygenating the blood and flowing it through the body. Shizun charged it again and reset the paddles. "Clear!" The baby jumped again, but still nothing was gained. Shizun charged the machine a third time, needing no prompting from her master. "Clear!" The body jerked again, but there was no response. By this time Tsunade was running on fumes from overpowering the Mystic Palm Jutsu, her hands trembling and sweat running profusely down her face along with tear tracks. As the Jutsu sputtered and died from loss of control and lack of chakra, Tsunade stared past the silent form of what was to be her son, reliving the horrible memories of how she couldn't save Dan either. Jiraiya silently walked over to her and softly put her hands on her shoulders. They trembled before she slowly turned her body to look at Jiraiya's tear-stained face. "Tsunade, I'm sorry. There's nothing left you can do." In her mind, she knew he was right. The present caught up with her. Her knees buckled as she fell to the floor, Jiraiya coming right down with her to comfort her as she finally let loose her anguish. Shizun silently cried to herself as she looked down onto the lifeless form she was supposed to take care of. It wasn't as supposed to be like this. This wasn't supposed to happen, she thought as she listened to her master's heart-wrenching cries. With the yondaime, a little earlier, Minato sat at the side of his late lover's bed, waiting for the doctor to bring his son. Tears ran down the face of the young Hokage as he talked to his deceased beloved. "Kushina, my love. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Maybe things would have turned out different. And maybe," Minato had to recollect himself, "I hope you can forgive me for that, but mostly, for what I'm about to set upon the shoulders of our child. How could I ask any other parent to give up their child for something I'm not willing to risk our own? I can only hope that the village treats him as the hero that he will become for holding the Kyuubi at bay. Rest eternal, my love. I hope the Shinigami shows mercy and lets me see you someday on the other side." With that, the yondaime kissed his lover for the last time, tears running off his face and onto Kushina's as he did. He straightened himself as he heard footsteps approaching the room. The door opened and the doctor he ordered earlier brought in his son. "Here you are." Yondaime-sama, Tomodachi stuttered, still intimidated by the earlier meeting and hoping he didn't notice anything strange about the baby. Luckily, the baby had a stunning similarity with the yondaime, so Tomodachi was pretty sure he could get away with it. Tomodachi watched on as the yondaime smiled sadly at the infant in his arms. "Hey Naruto. I'm me, your dad." The newborn slowly cracked its eyes open to look at the man holding him while he continued on. "I'm sorry, little guy, but I need you to help me save the village. I hope you can forgive us for not being around to watch you grow up, but I'll make sure everybody knows you're a true hero for what we're about to do," the yondaime stated as fresh tears ran down from his eyes. With one last look at Kushina's body, He poofed out of the room to leave his final instructions to the Sandaime. With the Yondaime gone, Tomodachi let loose the breath he was holding and slumped to the floor. Yamagawa poked his head into the room to make sure the Hokage was gone before coming into the room and speaking up. Did he notice? Tomodachi turned to him with a look of relief on his face. Not in the least bit. Yamagawa sighed with relief. Good, now that our lives aren't in immediate danger anymore, we can get back to work. Tomodachi nodded before gaining a thoughtful expression. Whose baby do you think that was? Yamagawa quirked his eyebrow before he waved off his colleague. Who care? The body looked almost exactly like that baby, so there's no point in worrying with that. The two doctors left to find the coroner for Kushina's body. Had they stayed and paid more attention, they would have noticed the small, shallow breaths coming from Kushina. The Sandaime was enjoying his retirement with the Yondaime in power. He hoped from then on he could rest easy that the village was in safe hands and live the rest of his life knowing he did his duty for Konoha. With the pregnancy of Minato's lover, and the shocking discovery of his two students accidentally creating a long-thought-lost Senju heir, it was to be a golden age for Konoha not seen since before the Second Great Shinobi War. But it was not to be. Hiruzen knew he would take up the seat once again after the Yondaime told him of his plan. Are you sure of this, Minato? Is there no other way? Kushina is gone, and with what you're proposing he wouldn't have anybody to help him through this burden. The Yondaime looked down sadly at the sleeping infant. I know, Sandaime Dano, but Naruto is the best choice. Not only could I not ask a parent for another child, but my son may be the strongest child to bear the seal. I only ask that you see to his well-being and honor my last request. The Sandaime nodded solemnly. All right, Minato, I'll do what I can for your son. But I suggest he go under his mother's family name to keep IWA and your enemies away from him, he recommended. The Yondaime nodded. A good decision, but tell him when he's older, will you? And tell Ero-sensei I'm sorry I couldn't be there for him and Tsunade. The Sandaime smiled sadly. That I will. Good luck, Yondaime Dano. I hope your sacrifice will bring peace to Konoha once again. With that, the Yondaime disappeared in a yellow flash, and the Toad boss Gamabunta could be seen summoned outside of the village as the Yondaime went to meet the Kyuubi on the battlefield. Back at the hospital, Tsunade's tears finally stopped, leaving the empty shell of a defeated woman on the floor in the arms of the equally forlorn father. She stared blankly at the tiled floor as she tried to form sentences. Jiraiya. I need to, it's just. Jiraiya knew what she was trying to say and he couldn't blame her in the least bit. I know, Haim. The promise, I guess it just wasn't meant to be. He agreed with her sadly. She looked into his eyes with ones that looked 30 years older than her even without the genjutsu. What will you do? Jiraiya sighed, feeling older than he should be. Probably leave too. The network is still there, and with nothing holding me here. He left the sentence unfinished as sadness washed over his face again. Before he spoke up again, I'll go talk to Sensei before I leave to see how things turn out. The Toad Sage finished. Then he kissed Tsunade on the forehead. Take care of yourself, Haim. Your luck, our luck won't always be this horrible. And with that, Jiraiya left Tsunade to see to things. Tsunade rose up and gathered her deceased child. She would bury him in Tanzakagai, away from Konoha. As she started to leave, she noticed her apprentice's lack of movement. Aren't you coming, Shizun? The raven-haired woman looked at her with fear and doubt in her eyes. But I should have I failed, how could you? Shizun! The older woman shouted. Shizun jerked back as her eyes met her master's. It wasn't your fault. It was the furballs. We should have stayed out of the village, or we could have should have, could have, would have, but we didn't. She yelled mostly at herself as angry tears went down her eyes. Shizun looked shocked at her master. Ts Tsunade-sama. Tsunade looked back to her apprentice and sighed. Let's go. I need to get out of this cursed village as soon as possible. Shizun nodded solemnly. Hi, Tsunade-sama. With that, both women left the hospital to disappear in the chaos. On the battlefield, things were not looking good for Konoha's shinobi. Especially for one of the Umbu Mednines just off the front lines. She was frantically trying to stabilize as many wounded as she could. Luckily for her, yet unluckily for others, the fox didn't leave many survivors, so the number of wounded was manageable. Though whatever advantage of numbers she had was taken away by the severity of the wounds and trying to stabilize the patient with demonic chakra as thick as fog impeding any progress she made. She popped another food pill as her reserves started to get low, the sweat rolling down her purple tattooed cheeks behind her Umbu mask. All the other medics were either stationed on other parts of the battlefield or suffering chakra exhaustion, leaving Rin the only one in their sector to treat the wounded. Her old teammate Kakashi disappeared to somewhere on the front line, leaving her with only 2 fresh genin to help her drag the wounded and dying back. She finally managed to stabilize her current patient, but noticed 2 others die from their wounds during her treatment of the third. She quickly got up and looked for the next one to work on, the triage marks on their head telling which one was more likely to survive with or without medical intervention. The cries and groans from the wounded mixed in with the sounds of the battle with the fox as she picked another patient. Tanuki-san! She heard from one of the genins in charge of pulling back the wounded. She looked up to see her 2 genin charges, Nanami and Hiroshi, dragging a Chunin Kunoichi back from the battlefield by her arms, too big for the children to even carry. She waved briefly to indicate where she was on the darkened, hellish battlefield, before paling and screaming, "Look out!" The 2 genins looked over their shoulder and went wide-eyed. They both jumped forward to dodge the demon tail that crashed number 2 feet away from them, and swung back around to smash some other poor bastard who wasn't quick enough. The two genin quickly got back up and dragged the kunoichi by the arms again to the relieved Umbu medic. Rin sighed in relief that they escaped, but she started paling again as they got closer. "Put her down and come to me," she yelled. The two genins looked at her like she was insane. "But she's wounded, Tanuki-san," Nanami yelled as she started turning around to look at the kunoichi. "No! Don't look!" Rin tried to tell the genins, but it was too late. They both found out they were carrying only half of what they started out with. Everything below the ribcage was mashed down in the earth 200 feet back. They both went wide-eyed and froze completely. Hiroshi shaking like a leaf and Nanami starting to hyperventilate as they dropped the upper torso, the Chunin's head moving to stare lifelessly towards them. Rin started running towards them, fearing they went into shock. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only one to notice the two horrified genin. The demon fox set its eyes right upon them. Rin ran faster, hoping to get them out of the way as the QB started lunging towards them. She got up to them and quickly wrapped her arms around their midsections and jumped as hard as she could to the right as the QB's fangs claimed what was left of the other kunoichi and 30 cubic feet of the soil underneath it. Rin and the two genin were thrown 50 feet away from the impending doom, only for it to reset its sights on the three. Rin got up with the genin still in her arms, ready to dodge again. But before the beast could attempt another attack, a flurry of sharp wooden tentacles shot out from the treetops and speared the QB in the right side of its face. Rin looked to see Dragon trying to divert its attention from her and the two genin, who were now completely in shock and needing medical attention as well. Fortunately, it was working. The QB set its hateful glare on the Umbu that just tried to gouge its face and attacked him as he retreated back into the woods, luring the QB away to another front of the battleground. Rin breathed a sigh of relief, again, and then went wide-eyed when Dragon appeared right next to her. "Weren't you luring it away?" she asked, wondering if she had to start running again. Dragon pointed to where he was earlier. "Would clone. Should keep it busy for a while," Dragon stated before looking around like he was trying to find something. He turned back to her. "Where the hell is Inu?" "I thought he was looking out for you and your squad." Rin slumped her shoulders for setting down the two genin to start treating them. "I don't know. The Chunin we were with were crushed under a tree, and after that, he just charged in. I found these two separated from their genin squad and put them to work dragging wounded away from the front lines." Suddenly they caught the sound of Ainu's voice calling out a jutsu before a bolt of lightning hit the side of the bijou, causing it to turn its sights right back from the way it came and let out a monstrous roar. Tanuki and Dragon saw this immediately. "What the hell is he doing? He's leading it right back here. Tanuki, get your team out of here before it's too late," Dragon yelled, already getting to start diversionary tactics again. Rin grabbed up the unconscious genin and started to run just as the QB did the same towards their direction. Thankfully, before she had to start dodging again, something big started hopping towards them, ultimately diverting its attention again. Rin looked up to see a sight she couldn't be happier to have laid eyes upon. "It's Gamabunta! Minato-sensei is here!" She got out as both Tanuki and Dragon watched the two mountain-sized animals start fighting. It proved not to be a great place to rest as the fight was happening only 100 or so yards away. Sounds like a good distance, but in a battle like this it's like being 2 feet away from a jutsu fight. Both Tanuki and Dragon pulled back farther as the yondaime and his summon fought the king of the bijou. Suddenly, Gamabunta grabbed onto the fox demon, but not without getting a gash across his eye and return. Rin looked up to see her sensei put down a bundle and start going through hand seals on top of the gigantic toad's head. "Hurry up, Gaki! I can't keep him still for much longer," she heard the toad boss say to Minato up top. Moments after, a bright light shone from the top of the toad's head and spread throughout the ruined forest. With Inu, Kakashi didn't know what to think. One minute he was fighting off the demon, the next his sensei came to the battlefield and started to fight it with his massive summon, forcing Kakashi to withdraw. Then another minute, there was a bright light and when it faded, the demon was gone. Kakashi watched as the John summons laid his prone sensei's figure on the ground before bursting into smoke. Kakashi's stupor ended there as he rushed to investigate. With Tanuki, Rin's eyes refocused as the bright light disappeared along with the QB. She stared for a few seconds before cheering. "He did it! He got rid of the bijou!" Her next words died in her throat as she saw the giant summon set down the prone form of her teacher and Hokage before disappearing back to his realm. Rin quickly barked out, "Dragon! Stay here with the genin. I'm going to find out if he needs medical help or not," she finished as she leapt away towards where the toad boss stood. She hoped it was just chakra exhaustion, but with how today was going, she knew to expect the worst by now. One thing that she did wonder though, was what that small bundle was in Sensei's arms before the light. With the quickly fading yondaime, Minato lay there as his body shut down, content in knowing the village was out of danger. He turned to the crying form of the baby, the seal on its stomach clearly visible. "Thanks, little guy, you're a hero now," he strained to say. The baby stopped its crying to look at the man next to it. The dying Hokage smiled at the staring infant before noticing a funny similarity. "I gotta say, little guy, you're gonna grow up to look a lot like your old man, but I can't for the life of me figure out where you got that nose. It almost looks exactly like." The baby scrunched its nose at Minato, making his eyes widen. "Tsunade's They didn't, the Hokage thought as things started to darken. Remembering the events at the hospital, he came to his final conclusion, fuck, and with that, the Hokage finally closed his eyes and passed on. With Inu, Kakashi went wide-eyed as he saw his sensei lying lifelessly on the ground. He ran up to his sensei's body and confirmed the worst. He was dead. Whatever he did must have cost him his life. He then noticed the wiggling bundle next to the man and the seal on its stomach that drew his attention. His sadness turned to rage as he pulled a kunai and got ready to kill the baby. With Tanuki, she went wide-eyed when she reached the clearing, seeing Inu ready to plunge a kunai through what she could see now as a baby. Sensei's son, she thought as she immediately ran towards them with speed she didn't think she was capable of. She jumped the last few feet, her arm outstretched hoping to make it in time as he started the downstroke. General view, a kunai through an outstretched hand. That's what Kakashi saw instead of a dead demon. He turned towards the owner and instantly got decked in the side of his head by his former teammate. What the hell do you think you're doing? Rin screamed at Kakashi. He regained his wits after the punch and immediately shot back, killing a demon. A demon that killed Sensei. So why the hell are you protecting it? Rin looked taken aback. What the hell, Kakashi? This is Sensei's son. Not the damn demon. She retorted while scooping the infant up to keep him from any new attacks. Kakashi jumped up to his feet. It stopped being Sensei's son when it was put into him. There's no way anything could hold that thing. This was the scene Tenzu found when he reached the clearing as well with the two genin under arm. Tanuki! Take him to the Sandaime and see what he wants done. Inu, I need help getting the wounded back to the hospital. Kakashi narrowed his eyes at Tenzu. Since when the hell are you the squad leader, dragon? He spit at the umbu. Tenzu's whole demeanor changed when you decided to break off of Tanuki's group to fight a demon instead, Inu. Now help me and I might just forget to file that little stunt you pulled. Kakashi flinched, before giving the infant one last venomous glare behind his mask before jumping towards Rin's patients. Rin tucked the infant under one arm and lifted the Yondaime's body over her shoulder. Dragon gave her a questioning look, from what she could tell from around his mask anyways, and she shrugged her shoulder. I might as well move them both. No reason to keep his body out here with that explanation. Tenzu nodded and she started her trek towards the Hokage Tower, albeit slower than possible due to the extra weight. It was a sad day for Rin indeed. Back with Jiraiya, the Toad Sage leapt across the buildings at a slow pace towards the Hokage Tower, listening to the sounds of the horrible battle going on less than a mile away. Suddenly, a bright light spread across the town, coming from where the Kyuubi was, and then everything went silent. He looked towards where the battle was supposed to be and saw a large red lump burst into smoke. That couldn't have been Gamabunta? The Sannin thought, then quickened his pace towards the Hokage Tower. He made one last jump and landed on the roof, only to see his old sensei there as well, looking out on the battlefield. The Sandaime turned to see his student looking at him, wondering what was happening. He said only 2 words to Jiraiya and it was all explained. Shiki Fujin, the old Hokage said as he puffed on his pipe. Jiraiya went wide-eyed. He didn't. That was his plan, he yelled out frustratingly. He knew the implications of such a seal. It meant that his student was dead. And then another thought came to him. What about his son? And Kushina? He asked hesitantly. The Sandaime turned to look at him sadly. He told me Kushina died during childbirth, and his son he used to seal the demon away. Jiraiya looked like a defeated man. Everything was wrong before and it just got worse now. His son was dead, Tsunade left again, another of his best students was dead along with his lover, and his student's child was now a Jinchuriki. Jiraiya slumped to the ground. The Sandaime looked at his student with worry. What about yours and Tsunade? He didn't make it. The beast's chakra was too much for him. Jiraiya answered him, knowing what he was going to ask. The Sandaime cringed with this new bout of bad news. I'm sorry to hear that, Jiraiya. I was really hoping something went right today amongst this horrible tragedy. What are you and Tsunade going to do? The wizened leader asked. Jiraiya recollected himself and stood back up. Tsunade already left the village with Shizun. I don't think she will ever be coming back, he stated. Hiruzen nodded solemnly towards his student's answer. I wouldn't expect her to. Not after all that's happened, he said as Jiraiya nodded in agreement before staring off at the forest. As for me, the spy network still needs me, so I guess I'll be doing the same. I'll keep you updated, he finished as he turned around to leave. Hiruzen looked at his student's retreating form. Jiraiya. What about your godson? The Toad Sage stopped in his tracks. Gomen-sensei, but I just can't right now. I might come back to train him when he gets older. I'll keep Minato's enemies from finding out about him as well. Please take care of him for me, will you, sensei? The Sandaime nodded solemnly. I'll do what I can for the boy. With that, Jiraiya shined off the roof, not to be seen in Konoha for over a decade. Back at the hospital, the coroner and his assistant nurse rolled the gurney into Kushina's room, getting ready to put her body in the morgue. They got ready to transfer her to the gurney when the nurse noticed immediately that something was wrong. Doctor, why is she still warm? They called us 15 minutes ago, she asked. The coroner took off his rubber glove and put it up to her mouth. It was faint, but he felt warm breath. For Kami's sake, she's still alive. Get a medic in here on the double. Preferably not those two idiots who can't tell the difference between a corpse and a patient. He ordered the assistant nurse as she rushed to the emergency ward to do just that. The Sandaime was not a happy man as he sat in what was once again his chair. Earlier, his chosen successor, Minato Namikaze, used a kinjutsu to seal away the Kyuubi into his own son, which was brought back to him from the battlefield by one of Minato's students. With Tanuki and the child in tow, the Sandaime went to the council chambers to address the current situation, only to find part of the council trying to use emergency powers to pass laws that would have usurped much of the Hokage's powers over his military. Fortunately, with the demonstration of his emergency powers, he managed to beat the council back into submission and halt the process in its tracks. Unfortunately for the counselor who had said emergency powers demonstrated upon him, it would take multiple surgeries to reconstruct his ribcage. Then he had to announce the sealing of the Kyuubi into Minato's son. Most of the civilian council wanted to finish the job, but were a lot less vocal than before. Danzo, predictably, wanted to turn him into a weapon, and Sarutobi's teammates/advisors wanted him under lock and key. Hiruzen, of course, put his foot down on this. Furishibaku no Jutsu. Enough. I only came you to inform you of his status and the Yandaime's last request. But since many of you here do not wish to honor that request, I am given little choice. His status as the holder of the Kyuubi and the sealing are now an S-Class. One who doesn't know already will not be told by those who do under pain of death, especially to his generation. With that said, he will be cared for by a person of my choosing until a time that he will be able to be moved to the orphanage for adoption, Sarutobi stated with finality. Most of the shinobi side agreed with this wholeheartedly, but the civilian side was seething. Had they gotten their laws through, they might have had more say in what happened to the Kyuubi brat, but until he was out of the Sandaime's care, they couldn't touch him. The Nara clan head Shikaku decided to speak up about a thought. Hokage-sama, what are you going to do about his lineage? If Iwa gets a sniff of a Namikaze heir in Konoha with no parents, things could get very troublesome. He addressed the issue in his usual lazy manner. Sarutobi had thought of that beforehand. It means he will have to take on his mother's name for the time being, to protect him from his father's enemies, until such a time he is able to defend himself under his true name. Therefore, he will be known in Uzumaki Naruto and his heritage will become a SS-class secret. Break this law, and your whole family will be killed, he stated darkly as his gaze wandered upon the paling faces of the council. He then sighed and wrapped up the meeting. With that all said, until a time when all casualties and damages have been accounted, this meeting is adjourned. WTH that he walked out of the council chambers, Tanuki and child following right behind him. Furishibaku no Jutsu Induru. Yes, that meeting could have been better, the Hokage thought as he watched Tanuki rock the baby back asleep. Which reminded him of his last painful event. The death of Jiraiya and Tsunade's son. As hard as it was for him, he knew it was 10 times harder on them. As much as Tsunade harped at Jiraiya for, in her words, using her womb to spawn another super pervert into the world, you could see the life and fire slowly returning to her eyes with each passing day. And why wouldn't it? She was going to have a child she had long since given up on. To lose her child, essentially, to the village must have shattered her. As much as it pained Hiruzen to think about, he didn't expect Tsunade to ever come back. Even Jiraiya was jumping with glee at having a son. He had even bought a house and fixed up one of the rooms for the baby. Now both his child and his student were dead. Jiraiya was always better at holding his emotions than others, so for him to have actually shown sorrow that night, the old Hokage couldn't even imagine if or when Jiraiya would come back to the village. He could only hope he did for his godson's sake at least. Things couldn't get any worse, could they? That's when Dragon decided to pop in to give the Sandaime his status report. Hokage-sama, all casualties and wounded have been accounted for and taken to the proper facilities, he stated. Sarutobi braced himself as he chewed on the end of his pipe. All right, give it to me. With that, Dragon continued on. 276 dead, 96 wounded, Dragon told him grimly. Sarutobi sighed wearily and slumped into his chair. Almost half of our current shinobi forces, they were already short before from the war. Now how many of the wounded will be able to go back to active duty? He asked. Dragon wasn't able to give a positive answer. Only 42, Hokage-sama. The rest will be crippled for the rest of their lives. Tanuki remembered her 2 charges and asked, what about the 2 genin that were with me, Nanami and Hiroshi? Dragon nodded. They made it. I think they'll need a psych evaluation though, like a lot of others. The Hokage, curious about her question, decided to speak up. Tanuki, why were 2 genin with an Umbu squad? Tanuki took her attention off of Dragon to look at the Hokage. The Chunin medic I was with was killed and Dragon was running diversions to keep the fox away from the wounded. I found them separated from the rest of their genin squads, so I conscripted them into pulling wounded to me, she answered. The Hokage had to wonder how chaotic the battlefield was for them. He nodded at the answer and turned his attention back to Dragon. Is that all to report? Dragon shook his head. No, Hokage-sama. The coroner wished me to tell you that Kushina Uzumaki is alive. Sarutobi's eyebrows threatened to shoot off the top of his head. What? Minato told me she was dead. How is this possible? The Hokage barked in frustration, causing Naruto to wake up and start fussing. Dragon had the decency to look startled. He said that Kushina-san's life signs were so faint that the doctors in charge of her must not have been able to detect them. The coroner called one of the lead medics once they left the shelter. He said her heartbeat and breathing have steadily increased after receiving medical care. Unfortunately, she slipped into a coma from prior negligence. He doesn't know when or if Kushina-san will wake. He finished. Sarutobi smacked his head against the top of the desk in defeat, causing Naruto to giggle. The Hokage chuckled humorlessly. Well, at least someone's cheerful around here. Even though he might never know his mother, he ended in thought. I still need to assign someone to care for him in his first year of life. The question is who? He continued his thoughts as he looked on the giggling baby getting tickled by Tanuki as she made baby noises at him. He looked up at Tanuki, and then back down at Naruto, then back to Tanuki as a grin spread across his face. Dragon's sweat dropped that his colleague set herself up like that. Tanuki remained blissfully unaware until she spoke up. You're just a bright ball of sunshine, aren't you? Don't you agree, Hokage-sa Maya? Wait. I can't, Tanuki-chan. I have a long-term B-ranked mission just for you. The Hokage cut her off as he grinned deceivingly at her. Tanuki tried to argue the decision, but Hokage-sama. I've never. Then it will be good experience for you. Think of it as learning firsthand about parenthood, without the stretch marks. He cut her off again. Tanuki looked shocked at his statement. Hokage-sama. He waved off her argument before it started. The fact is, Tanuki, that he needs someone to care for him until he gets on his feet, literally. You, being one of the Yandame's students, are the perfect choice. Not only that, it seems little Naruto has already grown a bond with you. He gestured towards the infant that was currently trying to take her mask off her face. Dragon, who was snickering in his corner, decided to pipe in. Tanuki-san, it's an easy, good-paying mission, and sure to beat some of the ones we'll be given in the future. With half of the shinobi forces gone, we'll have to send undermanned squads on missions that would clearly call for twice as big of squad. This keeps you in the village for a year or more, and by then the situation might settle down more. Tanuki slumped her shoulders in defeat, and looked at the infant who was still trying to pull off her mask. I guess you're with me for a while, little guy. The Hokage smiled now that Naruto's situation was taken care of. Then you might as well take your mask off, Rin, before he does it for you. With the Sandame's prompting, Rin pulled off her mask, much to the amazement of Naruto, who looked like she just grew a second face, until she stuck her tongue out at him. Then he just went back to giggling and clapping. It felt good to get that stuffy mask off her face, though to say she looked like crap from the long day would be an understatement. Dust lines mixed with sweat tracks across her face and tired, baggy eyes looked back at the Hokage. What should I do about things for the baby, Hokage-sama? I'm sure there's no stores open right now, and my apartment isn't what you would call baby-friendly. She asked as she watched Naruto start falling asleep again. The Hokage already thought about this, and while he felt guilty about enterprising on his student's loss, he couldn't think of a better place. My 2 students set up a house for their child. Unfortunately, they lost him in the QB attack. I don't believe they will be coming back anytime soon, so you may use it for the duration of your mission, the Hokage said as he scribbled down the address and grabbed up the extra set of keys Jiraiya had given him. Dragon realized what the Hokage's words meant. So, we lost the Senju heir, Hokage-sama? He asked quietly. He was hoping the Mokuton bloodline would be reawakened in that child so he could possibly teach him what he knew. He felt he owed an obligation to the Senju for his gift, but could never find an opportunity to pay it. The Hokage nodded sadly, and most likely Tsunade will never come back, not that I would blame her after how many loved ones she's lost. But it would be a waste to let the room and the house go unused. Minato never really had a chance to get ready for Naruto and planned to move into the Hokage mansion. Obviously that can't happen now, so there's nowhere else to put him. Rin nodded solemnly as she took the keys and address and then bowed to the Hokage. I'll do my best to care for him and keep him safe, Hokage-sama. The Hokage nodded to her, and she left the room with a sleeping Naruto in her arms. With Rin out of the room, Dragon looked back to the aged leader. What about Kushina-san, Hokage-sama? He asked. Sarutobi thought long and hard as he puffed on his pipe about what to do with Kushina until he reached the best decision. He looked at Dragon straight in the eyes. Have her transferred to the medical facilities inside the Hokage monument. Until she wakes up, she is to be declared dead. Not only will it keep any enemy away from her that might want to use Kushina to control or kill Naruto, but it will be best that Naruto doesn't know about her until she's awake, to keep him from grieving over her until she does. See to it personally, Dragon, and keep as many people out of the loop as possible. He ordered him. With his orders, Dragon bowed to the Hokage and shined out of the room. With the last Anbu gone, Sarutobi decided to retire. He knew that later today it would become a shitstorm of meetings and dreaded paperwork. Best to get as much sleep beforehand as possible. I get out, and they pull me back in. If I'm around to see the next Hokage, I'm stapling his ass to the chair, Hiruzen thought sourly as he locked up his office. He may love the village, but this till death do we part crap was not what he had in mind when he signed up. With Rin walked down the dark streets, with Naruto in hand, towards the address the Sandame gave her, Naruto still sleeping quietly in her arms. Many people were still out, cleaning up the mess after the threat was gone. Rin couldn't help but notice some people were glaring at the baby in her arms, much like Kakashi and the civilian council did. Do they know? But how, Rin thought to herself as she became uncomfortable under their glares. Did Kakashi tell them, Or did more shinobi see the ceiling than just her Ambu squad? Worrying that someone might attempt to do more than just glare at him, she took to the rooftops. It would also keep them from knowing where he was living. Whoever told them must have did so before the Sandame's law went into effect. Hopefully the law would be known before too many people found out about Naruto. Leave it to civilian gossip to blacklist someone who's only a day old, Rin thought humorlessly as she reached the address. She jumped down in front of the house and looked at it up close. It was a 2-story cottage on the outskirts of the town with white siding and a fenced-in yard. The ideal place to start a family that would never be around to use it, Rin thought sadly. Not only a family, but 2 people she knew personally. She started walking down the stone path towards the door as she thought of the 2 would-be parents. Jiraiya was Minato-sensei's mentor, so she had met him on many occasions, the latest ones of him gloating to Minato about how much of a ladykiller his son would be with his father's devilishly good looks, and then Minato-sensei reminding him that he had to get Tsunade wasted, knocked up, and kicked from one border of fire country to the opposite the next morning to sweep a girl off her feet. And Jiraiya firing back saying he liked the hard-to-get ones. Hard to get indeed. Then there was Tsunade. Rin would see her when she came into the hospital every so often to get a checkup on her pregnancy. As much as she harped about Jiraiya and all of his faults, you could tell she was just putting on a tough act and knew how much he cared for her. This was only proven when Tsunade started feeling completely drained every day. Jiraiya carried Tsunade bridal style into the hospital. Tsunade was red with embarrassment and complaining the whole time that she could walk, but did nothing to change the situation. It was found out after a series of tests that the baby wasn't just pulling nutrients from Tsunade's body, but chakra as well. His chakra network was already developing, something that wasn't seen in normal situation until 4 to 5 years old. Both parents gawked at Rin as they processed what that meant. He was going to be a powerhouse, and most likely specialize in ninjutsu. To say Jiraiya was grinning like a madman would be an understatement. To say he was thinking of his son's possibilities a little too far would be a big understatement. Tsunade humored him as he started talking about training him early, lightly cautioned him not to when he thought about raiding the Hokage archives for more jutsu to teach him, and just whacked him over the head when he suggested putting a speaker to her womb and piping audio instructions for jutsu. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, growled Tsunade. I'm not going to have my stomach blow up from a fire jutsu just because you wanted to start him off early. Rin's sweat dropped. She totally missed the fact he wouldn't understand what was being piped into the womb anyway, she thought, but knew better than to get into the argument. Unfortunately, they never got to find out how their son would have grown up, and now they were both gone. Minato-sensei was gone, Kushina-chan was in a coma, and she didn't even want to see Kakashi after what he tried to do last night. It was then she realized she was alone right now. With that reeling in her mind, she unlocked the front door. Ojama shimasu, she whispered to herself as she opened the door. What she found inside was a bit sad. New furniture, new carpets, new paint, and new appliances. The house looked hardly lived in. She supposed that was the case. She knew Jiraiya bought the house only about a month and a half ago and only got done renovating a few weeks ago. She went into the kitchen and checked the refrigerator and cupboards. Only some old takeout and a few instant noodle cups were found until she opened the last cupboard. Baby formula and bottles. At least she wouldn't have to shop for the baby anytime soon, just for her. Apparently, Naruto must have woken up sometime during their exploration of the first floor. Unfortunately for Rin, her first indication was when a baby mouth clamped onto her breast. Jaya. She shrieked and pulled him away, causing him to start crying. She sweat dropped and mentally berated herself. Of course he's hungry, ding dong. He hasn't eaten since he was born. She grabbed up some of the formula and a bottle and went to work. A little mess later and Naruto was happily suckling on a bottle. The lack of activity made Rin aware of how exhausted and dirty she felt. Once Naruto finished, he started fussing again. Crap, what am I supposed to do now? Think, oh. I have to burp him, she said to herself, and then lifting Naruto onto her shoulder. She started patting his back until she heard a little belch and something sliding down the back of her shirt. Definitely bedtime, she deadpanned. After trying to clumsily wipe the puke off her back, she grabbed up Naruto and headed for upstairs. After looking through a few rooms, she found the baby's room. The room reflected the owner's very well. The walls were blue, with imprints of happy-looking slugs and frogs bordering the middle. Baby books were stacked on a shelf and baby toys were piled in a toy chest. She walked over to the crib to see it occupied by a large stuffed frog and a stuffed slug. Where Tsunade found a plushy slug, Rin couldn't imagine. She set Naruto into the crib, who was too interested in the stuffed animals than going to sleep. She figured he would go to sleep eventually, and went to find the bathroom. A shower and a bed sounded really good right now. When she opened the door for what she assumed was the bathroom, one thing went through her mind: jackpot. The master bathroom was a sight for sore eyes. A tiled shower stall was sunken into the right wall along with the vanity, and along the left wall was a jacuzzi tub. Probably not fit for a lord, but a major upgrade from the half-bath back at her apartment. She couldn't peel her clothes off fast enough. She got both the tub and shower ready and jumped in to clean herself off. Blood, sweat, and dirt ran down the drain as she washed herself. Done. With the shower, she quickly jumped into the tub and practically melted as the hot water jets loosened the knotted muscles in her body. As she relaxed in the tub, previous thoughts came back to her. With almost everyone she knew gone, she felt alone. She had never been able to make many friends being in Umbu for the last 2 of her 16-year-old life. It didn't help that after Obito's death, she didn't socialize much. Maybe she could fix that now that she wasn't too busy with missions. This might actually be good for her. With that in mind, she rose out of the tub, to her body's protests, and dried herself off. Now that she didn't smell like death on a warm day anymore, she went to find the bedroom, not bothering to wear a towel. What she found in the bedroom was a definite Jiraiya. A heart-shaped bed with red satin sheets. She sweat dropped. Did he really think Tsunade would have slept in this thing? She shrugged it off and pulled back the sheets. Getting in, she found it really comfortable actually, a lot better than her real bed. This mission is going to be nice and easy, she thought as she started to drift off, the same time as she started hearing Naruto wailing. She cracked her eyes open. Did I just jinx it? She thought as she wearily got back out of the bed to check on him. Entering his room and smelling something nasty, she came to a conclusion. Yeah, I jinxed it as she picked him up to change him, putting him in range for him to grab one of her exposed. October 25th, 3 weeks into Rin's mission. Rin's assigned residence, 10:34 a.m. Rin looked at the infant in her arms, her eyes half-lidded and ringed with dark circles from exhaustion. He was a demon. No, not that one, cause the Kyuubi's got nothing on this brat. The Kyuubi would just kill you. Naruto wasn't as merciful. This kid slowly killed you by denying you sleep and stressing you out. When he wasn't hungry, which was almost never, he needed to be changed. When he didn't need to be changed, he was crying or fussing about something else. The house was a mess of scattered clothes, dishware, blankets, and food packages. The lawn looked like shit, and was growing weeds that would make Training Ground 44 look like a garden patch. Kushina never would have survived this kid, Rin thought darkly. Naruto woke up and clamped onto her cloth covered again. By now it was such a common occurrence that Rin put up with it for the simple reason that it kept him quiet for a while. That is until he found out, again, that he wasn't going to get anything out of it. He unlatched and started to cry. Her face sagged more. Just how much can this kid eat? I just fed him 2 hours ago, she thought intensely as she struggled to get up from the living room couch and make her way to the kitchen. Before she could move too far though, she heard a knock on the door. She looked at the door, more annoyed than curious. Who would intentionally visit the demon lair, she thought dryly as she seethed at the name the villagers gave the house she and Naruto were staying in. She opened the door and was shocked at who was on the other side. Inuzuka Rin. You move out of the compound not even a year ago and look at you now. A single mother after some one night fling you met in a 2-bit bar somewhere. What next? Working at a strip club for drug money. The person cried before bursting out in laughter. Rin was surprised. How did you know I was here? She asked the Inuzuka matriarch. Tsum crossed her arms and mock sobbed. What? Was my adopted little sister trying to hide from me? I know I don't take many showers, but I don't stink that bad, do I? She cried teasingly. That's right. Rin was adopted by the Inuzuka clan when she was a child, by Tsum's father and the previous clan leader. He and Rin's father were teammates. Her mother died of pneumonia a year after her birth, and when her father died during a border skirmish with IWA, the Inuzuka leader took her in. Her cheek markings signified her as extended family, not originally of the clan, but they would still stick by her as if she was blood kin. Though, even if she was adopted, the Inuzuka were surprised at how gentle and gullible she could be at times, showing she hadn't picked up any Inuzuka traits or picked up the worst of them. They couldn't figure out. Rin smiled as best as she could at Tsum's antics. Seeing her little sister's exhaustion and the wiggling blonde form in her arms, she decided to lay off the sibling talk. I bugged the Hokage until he told me where you were. Wasn't too hard considering how much paperwork he's had to do in the last few weeks. She explained as Rin led her into the house and both had a seat back in the living room. Tsum continued, so you're the one the Hokage suckered into raising the little devil spawn, huh? Rin peered at Tsum. You're not agreeing with those moronic villagers, are you? She asked irritably. Tsum just waved her off nonchalantly. Hell no, I don't think he's the Kyuubi demon in baby form. But I do know Kushina, and that's her brat. And if he becomes anything like her when she was young, add to that the fact that he has a giant chakra battery to suck off of, and you're going to have a real maelstrom on your hands in a few months. Pun intended, she grinned at her little joke. Rin paled almost pure white. A few months? She asked horrified. He was already 1. Tsum nodded knowingly. Oh yeah, it's when they learn to crawl and explore that they run you rampant. Hana started by 5 months, and Kiba's already looking at his crib bars funny at 3 months, Tsum said conspiratorially, and then continued. Right now, you only have to worry about crying for food and stuff. Rin was about ready to cry, but he does it almost constantly. Hell, AS class mission has never denied me of so much sleep. I haven't even gotten to keep the house up since I got here. She whined, upsetting the baby. Tsum picked him up off her lap and held him as she continued to talk to Rin. Yeah, I kinda noticed when your lawn tried to attack me. This ISAB class mission, right? Tsum asked Rin. Rin quirked an eyebrow at Tsum. Yes, it is. Why? She asked. sensing a solution coming up. You get paid on a regular basis, right? Some asked another question, which Rin just nodded. So hire a Genin team to help around the house every now and then. Rin's eyes widened and then narrowed a bit. I thought they were all being sent on higher class missions. She asked, not sure if D-rank missions were even possible for the village right now. Sim's face softened a little bit. A little bit, mind you. A few of the teams were so maffed up from the QB attack that they're in the village for now. Either their Jonin instructors are dead or they're missing teammates. They managed to cannibalize some of the teams and make out 3 patchwork ones, but with no senseis to lead them and a lot of them still traumatized by the QB attack, the Hokage didn't want to risk sending them out of the village for a while. I'm sure the Hokage would She yelped in surprise when she felt something bite her and looked down to see Naruto latched on. Rin waved it off. He does that all the time when he's hungry. Damn, that's right. I was about to feed him before you came, she said as Sim gently pulled him off, making him fuss again. Let me guess, sucks on the spigot but the tanks are dry and on? Sim poked fun at her sister. Rin almost face-faulted at the analogy. Well, sorry I didn't have a kid a few months ago. She huffed at the snickering Sim. Well, he's in luck today, isn't he? She said, pulling up her shirt and bra. Naruto immediately snatched back on, knowing what to do, which caught Sim by surprise. Geez, either this kid is hungry as hell or he's a natural-born pervert. She snickered and looked back at Rin. Well, here's your chance. Go get your cleaning team while I keep him busy. Rin nodded and jumped on the chance to get out of the house for a while. She got out the door, fought off the yard, and made her way to the Hokage Tower. The Hokage Tower. 20 minutes later, the Hokage was sitting in the mission's office after a meeting after another meeting after 2 piles of paperwork were battled after a bitchy council meeting. So in short, the mission's office was quiet and less stressful than the rest of his duties. It seems to be the closest thing to sleep he can remember getting in the last few days, he thought as he puffed on his pipe. The teams coming in for mission was expectedly limited. With most of them out of the village already, there were too few to take the missions that came in. And some weren't fit to leave the village. His mind churned at what to do with the ragtag Genin teams. D-rank missions were halted, so they had no missions to do inside the village unless it was an in-seed C-rank, which were a rarity. And with noon to train them, they were pretty much on standby with nothing to do. Hardly a healthy way to cope with post-traumatic stress. That was when Rin dragged herself into the mission's office, looking like she just got into a fight with an ugly stick, and lost. Her hair was a mess, she had bags under her eyes which were bloodshot, and she held herself like she had been hit with a tranquilizer dart. The Hokage could only imagine that caring for Naruto must be a full-time job, and that he probably looked the same way she did. Rin-san. Good to see you out and about. How goes the mission? He asked, knowing it was why she was here. She sat down in a chair across the table from the Hokage and looked him in the eyes, then banged her head against the table. The thread Shinobi wore was easier, Hokage-sama. The Hokage cringed at the comparison. How hard could it be to take care of a baby? Rin carried on like she read his mind. He has an inhuman appetite, bordering on that of a bottomless pit. Yet he has the energy of a 6-year-old on a sugar high, and a set of lungs that are worse than any alarm clock I've ever heard. He's a full-time job. Sim's watching him right now, which brings me to why I'm here, Hokage-sama, she said as she lifted her head and put on the most pleading face she could manage at the moment. The Hokage was curious about what she was going to request. Someone else to take Naruto was his first guess. So he was relieved when she stated simply, I need backup. I can't maintain the house and him. Both are a job and a half themselves. Is there any way for me to get one of the Genin teams to help me? She asked platingly. Sarutobi looked at her as the gears started turning in his head, formulating a solution to a thread of a problem. Ouch. Unfortunately, D-rank missions aren't being accepted at the moment, Rin. All of our complete Genin teams are taking up C-class and B-class missions. He stated. Rin looked at him undefeated. I heard that there are a couple teams that are on standby. She stated. The Hokage nodded. There are, but most of them are still traumatized by the incident and are off the roster. To give them a mission, I would have to put them back on, and then they would have to fall under the guidelines of the current affairs, meaning they would be sent on C ranks instead of D ranks. Which they are not ready for. He stated, lining her up for it. Rin looked downcast at the idea of not getting any help. Then the Hokage spoke up once again. But if you were to take responsibility for their recovery from their trauma, you could use the help you need as therapy for them. Rin perked up at that. Help them recover? And use the work around the house as therapy, she thought as the Hokage continued. It would also help them bond as a team since they are not the original. You would also have to help them physically train Bakuyus after they've recovered. They'll be sent on C ranks. I'm sure with 3 other sets of hands, it will be easier to care for Naruto as well while you do this. So to sum it up, you get the help you need, and they start to get back on their feet. Rin nodded eagerly at the opportunity. It was a fair trade all in all. Without much thought she agreed easily. Alright, Hokage-sama, I'll have them ready for C-ranked missions and them some. You can count on me, she proclaimed, almost bouncing with happiness almost. She was still wiped. The Hokage had Rin sign the forms to release the team to her for recovery. The forms looked familiar, But then all forms looked familiar, she guessed. Bureaucracy was never her forte. With the last form signed, the Hokage nodded to her. I'll send them over tomorrow morning then. Good luck on your task, Rin. Keep him safe. Rin bowed to the Hokage and left happily as she walked back to the house. Once Rin left, the Sandaime started to chuckle, which turned into maniacal laughter after a while. Damn, I am a genius. Just then, the Umbu codenamed Inu came in. Hokage-sama, the council is waiting for you. The Sandaime stopped mid-laugh. Fail. Ha shouted as he threw one of the mission stamps at the Umbu, which slammed at incredible speed into his head, knocking him unconscious. Never interrupt me in my genius moments. He growled at the unconscious man with the word failure imprinted in his forehead. He readjusted the collar of his Hokage robes, relit his pipe and walked over the man and out the door, ready to bust some heads. Rin's house. 45 minutes later, Rin returned to the house to see Tsum scrunching her nose at Naruto, and him scrunching his right back at her. It could be said that Tsum had a face that only a masochist could love, and going by some of the things Rin walked in on while she lived with Tsum back at the clan compound, that would be a very accurate description. She tried to mentally block off those memories again as she spoke up. What the heck are you doing, Nasan? Tsum sheepishly scratched her cheek after she set Naruto back in her lap. It's just too cute when he does it. Isn't that right, Naruto-chan? She asked as she picked him up and put his face in front of her, an opportunity he used to grab her nose. Yeesh, Gid's go da grip on him do, she stated in surprise as she pulled him off her nose. She looked back to Rin, who was sweat dropping at the two. So? How'd it go with the Hokage? Rin perked up a bit. I got one of the ones that were on standby, but I couldn't do it as a mission. Instead, the Hokage wanted me to help with their mental rehabilitation and physical training so they're ready for C-ranked missions when they're done. He signed their recovery over to me so they can help with the house, she said happily. Tsum looked at her with the straightest face she could manage with all the willpower she could muster. Oh, good to hear. Now you won't have to worry about keeping both the house and Naruto in check. Well, I'd better get going back to the compound. Why, you know how those idiots are if I'm not around to lead them. They might blow the whole thing up while I'm gone. Take care, Nae-chan. Don't get yourself into any more trouble with that. Tsum got up and handed Naruto to Rin and waved to both of them as she closed the door behind her. Rin was too caught up in wondering why Tsum was stuttering to hear the faint sound of uncontrollable laughter coming from down the street. She looked at Naruto, who was looking right back at her as she held him in her arms. Well, now that you're fed and have been up for a while, how about we take a nap? He answered her by grabbing her in his hand. She sweat dropped. Rin's house. Next morning, 9:03 a.m. Another restless night for poor Rin, unfortunately. She was currently in the kitchen chugging as much coffee down as possible before the Genin team showed up. Naruto kept himself occupied by staring at Rin. Much to Rin's relief, as much as her, she stared at him in the baby basket as she mused if he was doing it for food, or if it was the beginnings of another pervert. She truly hoped for the prior. She didn't want to help grow another super pervert in Konoha. Jiraiya was enough, and he was hardly in the village. As her thought process finished, she heard a faint knock on the door. Must be them, she figured as she walked towards the door. She opened it to see a sight she hoped she didn't see again. 3 depressed-looking Genins looked back at her, their eyes almost lifeless. What hurt more was she knew 2 of them. Nanami and Hiroshi were there. It was the first time Rin had seen them in the light. Nanami was a short girl yet obviously athletic with a dark, healthy tan. She had brown eyes and unruly, shoulder-length brown hair that she managed to tie back into 2 pigtails. She wore a tight black sleeveless vest that narrowed to her throat and wrapped around her shoulders and arms to be covered by fishnet from her wrist to below her armpit. The same fishnet adorned her knees with a pair of biker shorts and closed-toed knee-high boots to finish off her clothing. Hiroshi was dressed more conservatively with just a gray jacket with numerous pockets and blue shinobi pants with blue sandals. Brown hair and bespectacled gray eyes were all that were visible. The last girl Rin had never seen before. She had long, curly black hair and very strange red eyes which would probably look exotic if it weren't for the lifeless hue at the moment. She wore a strange red and white dress that looked like it was made of bandages. Just a pair of blue sandals and the headband on her head finished off her ensemble. The one thing that had Rin concerned the most were the bags she spied all the Genin carrying. Nanami and Hiroshi were staring at Rin until it clicked where they had seen her before. They both lunged at the unsuspecting Jounin, wrapping their arms around her as she fell to the floor. Arigato Tanuki-san! They both cried. Rin's sweat dropped. They know who I am without my mask? How much does my cover suck? She thought morbidly. Nanami, Hiroshi. My name is Rin, so don't call me that when I'm not in Umbu uniform, alright? She whispered heatedly at them. They both looked up at her and nodded before getting off. Rin lifted herself to a sitting position. You're welcome, by the way. So you guys are part of the Genin team that I need to help, huh? And what's your name? She asked the unfamiliar Genin. The girl crimson eyes moved to the ground as she fidgeted meekly. Hiroshi decided to cut in. The Hokage told us her name is Karinai. Rin looked over to Hiroshi. Can't she tell me that? Hiroshi just shrugged. She hasn't talked since we met her, Rin-san. Hokage-sama said that's part of her problem. Rin raised an eyebrow to this, traumatized to the point of muteness? She must have seen something pretty horrible, she thought grimly. Well anyways, welcome to my house for now. They all nodded and picked up their bags, making Rin curious. What are the bags for? She asked the Genin. Nanami decided to speak up this time. Hokage-sama said we were to live here through the period, Rin-san, she stated. Rin eyebrows shot up. You are? But what about your families? Won't they miss you? Hiroshi and Nanami looked even more downtrodden. Either of us have families. Hiroshi and I came from the same orphanage, and joined the academy at the same time. From what we can guess, Karinai-san doesn't have any parents either. Nanami told Rin in a depressed voice. Rin felt guilty for bringing it up. Oh. Gomen, she apologized softly, causing Hiroshi and Nanami to shake their heads. No worries, it's not like we knew them anyways. Hiroshi stated simply. Rin nodded and finally got back up and brushed herself off. Well, I should invite you to your new home, I guess. It's kind of a sty right now, which is what I was hoping you guys could help me with, Rin told the Genin as they walked into the house. Nanami found this odd to say the least. How hard can it be to maintain a house, Rin-san? She asked. Rin turned around to regard her new charge. Didn't the Hokage tell you the details of my mission? She asked. All three Genin shook their heads. We didn't even know you were on a mission, Rin-san, Hiroshi spoke up. Oh fucking great, Rin thought crassly. Well I am, and now you are too. I'll show him to you, she said as she led them to the kitchen. Nanami quirked her eyebrow. Him? She asked but got no response from Rin, who was paying attention to what looked like a baby basket on the table. Rin turned around to face the Genin with the basket next to her on the table. She pointed to it. He is my mission, she stated. The Genin came up to the table and craned their necks to look in the basket, turning white as they saw the whiskered blonde baby with his blue eyes staring at them. Gaia! Holy shit! Gasp! Nanami, Hiroshi, and Karinai reacted as they found their way against the counter cabinets on the other side of the kitchen in the blink of an eye. Hiroshi pointed a shaky finger at the basket where Naruto was giggling happily at the funny new people. THTH, that's the QB baby, he shouted with a horrified look on his face. Rin quirked an eyebrow at the Genin, still next to the baby basket looking at the Genin. Well, at least it's fear instead of hate. I can work with fear, she thought as she addressed the Genin. This is Uzumaki Naruto, the baby the Yondaime used to seal the QB, and my mission is to take care of him for the first year or so, she stated. Nanami was the next to speak. But he'll kill us, she said, still looking fearfully at the basket, even as Rin picked up the wiggling infant. Oh? I've been taking care of him for 3 weeks and he hasn't killed me, she retorted. But the villagers said. The villagers? Since when did the villagers become so knowledgeable in the shinobi arts? Especially high-level Fuinjutsu. Don't believe the villagers, they're just a bunch of ignorant morons looking to put the blame on something. Rin cut Nanami off. Do you know how it works? Hiroshi asked skeptically. Rin shrugged a little bit. I'm not as much of a seal expert as Minato-sensei was, but he did manage to cram a good amount of knowledge into me, she stated. It was then Naruto got hungry and decided to clamp down onto Rin's breast, causing the Genin to smash up against the cabinets again and point at Naruto with faces of terror. Rin-san. He's trying to eat you. Nanami and Hiroshi screamed. Karinai just stood there looking back at the Genin. Rin facepalmed. Bakas. Babies feed off of milk from the mothers. How did you get through sex ed at the academy without knowing that? Hiroshi sheepishly scratched his temple. I wasn't really listening. I was staring at the in the picture and made a comment to Nanami, and she got us in trouble. Nanami, who was busy squeezing her small, wondering how milk got out of them, finished what he left out. You said I should take my top off so you could compare notes. The gut punch was worth sitting in the hall, she stated heatedly, which started them bickering back and forth. Rin decided to wrap it up. NYWYS, now that you know Naruto isn't going to kill you, posses you, or eat you, I'm going to feed him and then get you situated in. She told the Genin as she set Naruto back in the basket and went to make a bottle. As she was, the Genin crept back up to the basket to look at Naruto. He laid in his basket, flailing his arms around and making usual baby noises until he made a particularly loud one that made the Genin flinch. Oh, for Kami's sake guys, he's not gonna lunge out at you, Rin said behind them, scaring them more than the baby did. Rin picked Naruto up and shoved him into Nanami's arms as she tried to stutter out a protest. Rin then handed her the bottle. You guys are going to help feed him every now and then, so you might as well start now. Nanami, reluctantly, fed Naruto as the others watched on. Starting to accept the fact that he wasn't going to steal their souls anytime soon, they visibly relaxed around the young blonde infant. Nanami finished feeding Naruto and started to panic as he started fussing again. What do I do? You have to burp him. Put him against your shoulder and pat his back, Rin supplied helpfully. Nanami put the baby to her shoulder and patted him, finally hearing a little burp and something running down her shoulder. What is that? Get it. Rin, who was chuckling at the familiar predicament, grabbed up some paper towels and walked over to the Genin to wipe off the baby spit up. Relax, it's just milk and baby bile. Nothing serious. Alright. Now that that's taken care of, let's put him up for a nap and assign rooms. Rin said as she took Naruto from the still green-looking Nanami. With Naruto in tow, she led them up to the baby room and told them about the baby duties they would have to split between them. With Naruto taking a nap, Rin addressed the Genin as she walked into the bedroom she had been using. There's only 2 rooms, so we'll have to split up the boys and girls. This is the room I've been using, so I guess it will be the girls' room, Rin stated sheepishly as the Genin gawked incredulously at the heart-shaped bed with red satin sheets. Karinai flipped a switch to turn on the lights and, instead, romantic music started playing from hidden speakers and red disco light engulfed the room. Sweat dropping, Rin quickly shut the switch back off. Yeah, the lights are this switch here, she stated embarrassingly as she switched on the lights, only to illuminate Hiroshi, who was digging through the closet. Hey guys, look. He came out of the closet with a black leather hood on his head. I'm a Mexican wrestler, he stated as he struck a wrestler pose. The 2 Genin kunoichi turned their heads to peer at Rin as she was waving her arms at Hiroshi. Take that off and put it back. You shouldn't be in other people's stuff, she scolded none too effectively considering the full-face blush she was wearing. Nanami pointed at Rin. Hentai, she proclaimed, and Karinai nodded. Rin's sweat dropped and defended herself. This isn't my house, guys. I'm only using it for the mission. That stuff was here before I got here. She tried reasoning with the 2 kunoichi. Nanami put her hands on her hips. Oh really? Who owns it then? She asked skeptically. Jiraiya, Rin stated simply. Blinking a couple times, Nanami let out, oh, while Karinai nodded with the same look of understanding. Rin's sweat dropped again. Really? Even the Genin know how perverted he is, she thought before clearing her throat. Anyways, since the bed is well big enough for 3 people, we can sleep here and Hiroshi gets the smaller bedroom. Nanami spoke up again. Actually, Rin-san, I can sleep in Hiroshi's room and you and Karinai can sleep in this room, she stated without so much as a blush. Rin's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. What? You guys can't do that. You're too young, she stated incredulously. Hiroshi, who had finally gotten out of the closet, shrugged at Rin. We've been sharing a room since the orphanage, so I don't see what's wrong with it, he replied like it was no big deal. But you're a boy and a girl. There's definitely something wrong with it, Rin fired back, not convinced. Nanami shook her head. Rin-san, we've been changing in front of each other since we were 6. It's nothing we haven't seen before, she replied casually. Hiroshi decided to add his 2 cents in with a devious smirk and a wag of his eyebrows. Or mind seeing again. He prodded fun at Nanami, earning him an elbow in the gut, which he took and kept laughing. Rin shook her head at their argument. A childhood couple, huh? Oh well, alright, fine. I won't separate you 2 lovebirds. If you want to share a room, it's fine by me, she conceded, teasing them at the same time, which caused both Genin to choke and blush. Alright. Now that that's settled, grab your stuff and put it in your rooms, then meet me back downstairs. We have some cleanup to do, Rin stated with a smirk. A few minutes later, the Genin were lined up in front of Rin. Alright guys, as you can see, this place is a mess. Rin started taking her eyes off the Genin and used her hand to direct their attention to the dirty house. She closed her eyes, imagining taking a nap. I will be taking a nap as I haven't had much sleep the last 3 weeks. Before I give you guys your jobs, are there any questions? I have one, Sensei, Hiroshi spoke up. Rin came out of her little dream world and turned to the shinobi. What is it, Hiro? Her mind froze and she turned white as she looked at the Genin. Why are there eye patches on the floor? He asked, a black lacy patch of material over his eye. Hiroshi. That's my dirty underwear. Rin screamed at the Genin after her brain unfroze. Hiroshi's eye widened. Really? It's just a patch of cloth and a lot of string, he said incredulously, pulling it off his head and looking at it. He then turned to Nanami. Why don't you wear these? He pouted, causing Nanami to turn beet red and stutter. Give me those, Rin yelled, snatching her dirty thong out of his hands. Hey, she may be a 17-year-old, but she was a 17-year-old, damn it. She stared intensely at the cause of her headache. Hiroshi. Your job is to tame the yard, she barked, pointing at the door. Hiroshi saluted and got the hell out of there fast. Nanami. Rin started, throwing the thong in her hands at the girl, who caught them with a horrified look. You do laundry. Go. Rin barked, causing Nanami to forget about the pair of underwear in her hands. Hi. Gah. She screamed after she saluted, flapping the thong right into her face. She ran off and started collecting the dirty laundry strewn out on the floor. Rin turned her attention to the last Genin, Karinai. Clean the kitchen up, she told the Genin more softly than the other 2. Karinai nodded and left to do the job. With all the Genin at work, Rin finally let out a sigh of relief and dropped onto the couch like a stone anchor. Time for a nap, she thought before hearing how Hiroshi was doing outside. Good lawn. Nice lawn. Happy lawn. No wait, bad lawn, bad lawn, stay away, get away from me, gahhhh. Definitely time for a nap, Rin thought as she dozed off. 3 hours had passed since Rin had dozed off. It had to be the longest amount of time Rin had ever been able to sleep in the last month. She woke up to the sounds of a body hitting the floor in front of her. She cracked her eyes to see Hiroshi laying face first on the floor in front of her. "Lawn's dead," he said flatly to Rin as she moved off the couch. She cracked open the front door and looked outside to see the lawn with big bare patches scattered all around. "What the hell happened? Why are there bare spots everywhere?" she asked the half-dead Genin. He turned his head in her general direction. "That's because I had to deroot those monsters that were disguised as weeds. Grass seed would be a good purchase," he stated. A second later, Rin was holding out Rio notes at the prostrate boy. He looked at her warily. "Now?" Rin just nodded. Sighing, he tiredly drug himself back up. Grabbing the Rio notes, he headed out the door. Rin figured it would be a good time to see how the other Genin were doing. She found the kitchen absolutely spotless, which astounded her. She would have complimented the girl, had Karinai not been sitting at the table, staring at the empty middle of it with a clouded expression. She may be way out of my league. Shouldn't a therapist be helping her? Rin thought as she looked at the girl. "Good job, Karinai-chan," she said aloud, shocking the girl out of her thoughts. "When Hiroshi comes back from the store, would you mind helping him with sowing the lawn?" Karinai just looked at her for a few moments before nodding and leaving to meet him when he got back. Rin sighed. 2 down, 1 to go. She walked to the laundry room. When she got there, she found stacks of clean clothes and Nanami sitting on top of the washing machine, during a spin cycle, with a glazed expression. Finally noticing Rin was in the room, she eeped and jumped off the washing machine with a furious blush. This eye is the last L-load, so I'm gonna help Hiroshi buy." Nanami jumbled while racing out of the laundry room. Rin was still staring at the washer. Finally curiosity got the best of her, and she got on. Not feeling anything for a while until whoa. She quickly jumped off the machine. Heh, she stuttered to herself before leaving the laundry room with flushed cheeks. Rin, after readjusting her pants, figured she'd check to see how Naruto was doing before the Genin got done. Going up to the baby room, she did just that. After she had changed out the massive load that Naruto had made, she went back downstairs with Naruto in tow, to find the Genin, done with rezoing and waiting for her. "Alright you guys, who knows how to cook?" Only Hiroshi raised his hand. "I can, Rin-san," he spouted. Nanami stared at him disbelievingly. "No you can't. The only thing you made in the orphanage kitchen was a fire." He shrugged like it was nothing. "I put it out now." She looked at him dumbfounded. "You made it worse." To this Hiroshi just polished his fingernails while looking at her with smugness. "Worse? Or better?" Nanami couldn't help but slap her forehead. Rin immediately came to a decision and pointed at Hiroshi. "You will not ever cook," causing his shoulders to slump. Rin sighed. "I guess I'll be the cook then." "Nanami, Kuranai, you help me. Hiroshi, you set the table. Let's make some lunch," she said to them. All three nodded and got to work. A while later, they were sitting down to yakitori and tsukimono on the side with green tea, while Naruto got baby formula. Everybody dove in after a hearty itadakimasu. The Genin were pleasantly surprised. "Rin-san could cook. Suga. This is better than anything I've ever had," Nanami proclaimed, Hiroshi nodding in agreement as he shoveled the food into his mouth as fast as he could, while Karinai just gave a nod and ate at a sedate pace. Rin smiled at the compliments. It wasn't every day she got to cook for more than herself. After the main meal was done, Rin decided to get to know her charges a little better. "Well guys, now that we have eaten, how about we fill each other in more about ourselves?" she suggested to the Genin. Nanami ached. "Rin-san? Could you be more specific about what you want us to tell you?" Rin took on a thoughtful pose before speaking up again. "Well, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, goals. Also, considering I need to help you guys get back on your feet, your shinobi skills, what you need to work on, and more importantly, what the hell happened," she described rather bluntly. Hiroshi and Nanami slumped, knowing exactly what the last of her summary meant, while Karinai seemed to sink in on herself. "I guess I'll start then," Hiroshi volunteered reluctantly. "Well, I'm Hiroshi. No last name. I like puzzles, geography, tonkatsu, and my best friend Nanami-chan. I dislike sashimi, prudes, and people who are full of themselves. My goal is to become an elite jounin. My skills are in strategy, kenjutsu, and traps. I don't know many ninjutsu, my taijutsu is average, and my genjutsu is next to none. Well, the reason Nanami-chan and I are here is because our Jonin sensei and third teammate were killed when a bunch of trees went down that night, and we kinda have a few problems left over from that incident that happened." He dropped down to a mumble by the end, but Rin knew exactly what incident they were talking about. Having a giant demon fox bear down on you like that would definitely leave you with problems. Rin looked to Nanami, who was staring solemnly at the table. "Nanami, how about you next?" Rin asked gently. Nanami looked up at her and nodded reluctantly. "My name's just Nanami. I like exercise, swimming, sukiyaki, and my best friend Hiroshi-kun. I dislike fangirls, people who are full of themselves, and sushi. My goal is to become an expert in taijutsu and a jounin. My skills are taijutsu, short-range ninjutsu, and a little genjutsu. I could use work on more genjutsu, some longer-range ninjutsu, and I can always work on my taijutsu. I'm here because of the same reason as Hiroshi-kun." she finished sedatedly. Rin just nodded and looked to Karinai. Can you speak to us, Karinai-chan? Or don't you feel up to it? She asked the red-eyed Genin. She just seemed to sink into her chair as she shook her head no. Hiroshi seemed to become thoughtful before he pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket and handed it to Rin. Sandame-sama said this was her basic information. Rin unfolded it and read aloud, Yuhi Karinai. Age 14. No living relatives. Specialty in genjutsu and tracking. Weaknesses in taijutsu and ninjutsu. Sole surviving member of Team Himiko. Is all that correct, Karinai-chan? She asked the teen. Karinai just nodded, her eyes staring past them all as if she was reliving the events in her mind. Rin nodded back and decided letting them know a little about her wouldn't hurt. Well, I guess I should tell you about me as well. My name's Inuzuka Rin. I'm not an Inuzuka by birth. You two already know I'm an Umbu as a medic nin, and used to be a part of Team Minato. I like reading, gardening and herbology, and yakuzakana. I don't like people who doubt Minato-sensei's work, arrogance, prejudice, and I'm not a big fan of bureaucracy. I specialize in medical jutsu, and have skills in taijutsu and defensive genjutsu. My real weak point is ninjutsu. Now aside from the mission, I have to get you back to snuff while you guys help me with watching the house and Naruto. Not only will I be helping you recover mentally, I will be physically preparing you for C-rank mission after your psych eval is clear, so I hope you brought your shinobi gear with you. Rin finished, getting an unsure look from the Genin towards the end of her rant. What wrong? She asked the Genin, looking at the hesitance in their expressions. Nanami decided to speak for them. They took away all our kunai and shuriken for standard suicide prevention, she stated glumly. Rin's frowned as she stated her thoughts on the idea. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're shinobi for Kami's sake. If you really wanted to kill yourself, you could just snap your own neck. Hell, they didn't even take your trap wire, did they? It would be child's play to loop it around your neck and jump off of something, severing your Rin-san. Arigato, but please stop. Nanami shouted at the morbidly rambling Jounin while waving her hands in front of her to get her attention. Rin refocused on the Genin to see them as white as ghosts. She sheepishly scratched her cheek. Gomen guys. Sometimes I do that. Anyway, we'll have to get you more shuriken and kunai now, won't we? You obviously don't look suicidal to me, so that ends now. We'll worry about that tomorrow. For now, let's get a few more parts of the house done before dinner. I'll keep Naruto in check and fix dinner. Hiroshi, I want you to work on the living room. Nanami, do the bathroom. Karinai-chan, clean the halls and the bedrooms. She ordered the Genin, getting a nod from them before they moved out. Rin sighed in contentment, before cleaning off the table. She stopped to look at Naruto, who was just observing everything from his basket. What do you think of them, Naru-chan? She asked the lively infant. He just scrunched his face at her, getting a chuckle from Rin. True, too early to tell. Though I can already see some of their personality quirks. She said to Naruto, more for herself than the infant. A few hours later, Rin couldn't believe it. The house looked clean again. No dirt, no used diapers, no dirty clothes, no overflowing garbages. Clean. She could dance, but she was getting dinner on the table. The Genin, finished with their duties, looked at the food like wolves. Hiroshi was looking at the food like a desert victim looked at water. Is that shabu-shabu? He asked, starting to tear up. Rin's sweat dropped. Yeah, it is GH. She yelped as both Naomi and Hiroshi latched on spouting praises. Rin always had a knack for cooking, but never really got to do a lot of it when she was in Umbu. Not to mention cooking for yourself was sort of depressing. So as much as the attention of the Genins freaked her out, she definitely liked knowing people appreciated her cooking. You're welcome. Sit down and eat, guys, cause this is all the beef I bought. They didn't even wait for Rin to finish before diving in. Karinai and Rin sat down and started eating at a more sedated pace, which didn't last for long, trying to battle Nanami and Hiroshi for their share of the pot. With bellies full, Rin spent the rest of the evening trying to appease the force that was Naruto, while the Genin opted to watch, meaning they were forced to watch so they could do it later. Quicker than they thought possible, it was time for bed. Turns were taken in the 2 bathrooms and nighttime rituals were practiced before Nanami and Hiroshi went into one bedroom, while Rin and Karinai went into the other. Getting into a heart-shaped bed with a 13-year-old kunoichi proved to be extremely awkward, especially after turning off the lights and hearing a buzzing sound coming from the closet, which turned out to Rin's embarrassment to be a female personal massaging device that Hiroshi must have accidentally turned on in his search. After that little bit of blushing, the two were finally able to settle in on the large bed, which let Rin think of the new twist in her situation. She was now in charge of 3 traumatized Genin and a baby with the most powerful bijou in its gut. Though, now that she thought of it, she hadn't seen much in the way of trauma in the Genin. She figured she should just count herself lucky that they weren't as traumatized as it was made to look like they were. Nanami and Hiroshi's room. Nanami was very comfortable, Hiroshi sleeping just inches away. They had been sharing the same bed since they were 8, so by now it was a norm for them. Hiroshi fell asleep like a log while Nanami listened to the crickets chirping outside on the summer night. Suddenly, they all seemed to stop chirping, and then the light from the window seemed to darken. Nanami grew stiff and started to turn towards the window. Her fear only worsened as she faced the window to see a giant demonic red eye staring back at her, whatever it belonged to starting to growl. Nanami's breath hitched in her throat before the creature let out a vicious roar, followed by the room bursting into flames. Rin and Karinai's room. Rin heard a blood-curdling scream from Nanami and Hiroshi's room. She shot out of bed and darted towards the room. When she opened the door, she found Nanami bawling her eyes out in Hiroshi's arms as he tried to comfort her. What the hell happened? Rin asked the only composed genin in the room. Hiroshi just said it straight, another nightmare. She's been having them for a few weeks now. She'll calm down after a while. Rin just nodded as her shoulders slumped. Nightmares. So much for being lucky, she thought, wondering how she was going to fix this. Nanami just kept sobbing and mumbling incoherently. Rin also heard Naruto crying, meaning the scream must have woken him up. She went to check on the infant, only pondering about why Nanami and Hiroshi were sleeping in one bed. A while after, the sobs seemed to die down, and Naruto was back asleep, so Rin went back to her room. She was met with the trembling Karinai, and the occasional sniffle, meaning she must be crying as well. Rin's last thought was, this may be harder than I thought, she mused sadly. With that, she got into bed next to Karinai and tried to get her to sleep. Next day 8 a.m., Rin let out a prolonged yawn as she sat at the kitchen table, looking at the still sleeping infant in his basket. 3 yawns came from the other side of the tail. Rin lazily brought her sights onto the genin, who got as much sleep as her. Last night was not the most peaceful of sleep any of them have gotten. Nanami woke up screaming 2 more times, leaving Hiroshi to calm her down, Naruto woken up and crying, and Rin wide awake in her room. Karinai didn't wake up screaming, but had just as many nightmares and expressed them physically with tossing and turning. Rin dropped her head to the table. I ask for help, and I get more problems, she thought darkly. Nanami spoke up, feeling she was the cause for all of their problems. I am really sorry, guys. I know that thing is locked up, but I keep having those nightmares. Spoke as she slowly sunk in on herself. Rin raised her head to look at the ashamed kunoichi before sighing. I guess that's what I signed up to fix, so I should have known what I was getting myself into. Well, gradually work on trying to get over your issues. In the meantime, we'll also be doing physical training. That's right, first we need to go shopping for weapon replacements. We'll do that after breakfast. Hiroshi perked up. What's for breakfast, Rin-san? He asked excitedly. If yesterday's meals were anything to go by, it would be a dream come true. Rin smirked, then got up and walked to a cupboard. She grabbed a box of cereal, walked back and set it firmly on the table in front of the wilting genin. Hiroshi pouted. You want me to eat this peasant food after eating food made by a goddess? He asked incredulously. Rin chuckled. You keep talking like that, Gaki, and I'll start thinking you're flirting with me. Hiroshi expression turned into a sly smirk. If it gets me a better breakfast, I'll say anything you want. Rin rolled her eyes. The day I start cooking breakfast is the day you 3 stop waking me up in the middle of the night, and I finally get a full 8 hours of sleep. Until then, you're eating peasant food in the morning. Now eat up, we have crap to do today. She left no room for argument. An hour later, Rin had Naruto tucked into the basket and was walking through town with the 3 genin walking behind her. She had gotten out of her casual clothes and now wore her old jounin uniform. Not the baggy pieces of cloth she wore when she was a chunin. She wore a black tube top under a short sleeve mesh shirt and an olive green jacket over all of that. She wore light brown shorts that went to just above her knees, and sandal boots that ended halfway up her shin. In other words, Rin looked a lot like an Inuzuka, yet with not as intimidating scowls. As the group progressed down the road, they quickly noticed the glares the small blonde-haired bundle in the basket was getting from the civilians around them, and knew why. The genins tried hiding themselves when they started hearing whispers of demon lovers and the like from the people around them. Rin, seeing the uneasiness in the genin and the whispers coming from the villagers, started leaking killing intent at the stupid morons. An unexpected person reacted to the killer intent and investigated, making himself visible to the group. Rin? Why the hell are you venting so much ki at civilians? The dragon Mastambu asked in a confused tone. Rin just put on a very ominously sweet smile, just preventing any incidents from a group of foolish people. What about you? They only put you on village patrol? Dragon chuckled humorlessly. No. I'm just on the mandatory 3-day space between S-ranked missions. Pretty much a working holiday before getting thrown back into the Viper Pit. He noticed the 3 genin poking their heads out from behind Rin. I thought you were only looking over 1 kid. How'd you end up with 3 brats and a baby? He asked the sweat-dropping jounin. A vein bulged on Nanami's head. Who are you calling a brat? Rin quickly nabbed the back of the girl's shirt as she lunged at the amused Umbu. As she was still swinging, Dragon walked up to the restrained genin and poked her nose. Seems you got a Yamaniko among them as well. WH. He barely managed to remove his finger before she tried to bite it. Don't you have anything better to do than harass my charges, Dragon? Rin asked flatly. Dragon just waved it off. Not really. My shift is pretty much over, so I was. Rin shoved the basket into his arms. Good. You can accompany us and watch over Naruto for a bit. Dragon looked like he wanted to protest, But one look at Rin's disheveled state told him it would be like poking a beehive. His shoulders slumped, and he started walking with the group whilst looking at the baby. Doesn't look like the evil creature the rest of the village makes him out to be. Rin snorted. I'll let you change his diaper. Somebody wait, the whole village knows? She asked with a shocked look. Dragon looked back to her. Yeah, one of the civilian council members blabbed and got his head chopped off, but the damage was already done. Though, from what I've heard, one of the shinobi off the battlefield spread the news around before the Sandane even made it law. He told her. Rin brows furrowed in contemplation. You don't think he knew? She asked as her expression darkened. Dragon seemed to as well, even with the mask. Honestly, Rin, with how he was acting, I wouldn't put it past him. Rin could only shiver in disgust towards the thought of her ex-teammate. Dragon was busy looking at the still simmering Nanami, and the other two genin blatantly staring at them. He smirked under his mask, grabbed it, and took it off to flash his scary face no jutsu at them. They all gasped in fear and put Rin between him and them as he put his mask back down. Rin chuckled. You aren't supposed to show your face, Dragon, he just replied in mirth. I don't care, it was worth it. And if anybody wants to put that face in their bingo books, more power to them. He then returned to paying attention to the baby basket he was holding. 10 minutes later they were at a weapons shop that Rin frequented. Before entering, she turned to Dragon. Do you want to wait out here? I'm sure you don't want to argue with the owner about Naruto, she asked humbly. Dragon waved her off. I haven't slept since yesterday, he stated. Rin looked at him puzzlingly. What? But he already walked into the store. Rin just shrugged it off and waved the genin into the store. She found Dragon in the store setting the baby basket on the counter in front of the store clerk. Clerk-san. Look at this. He ordered the confused clerk. The clerk paled when he saw what was in the basket and pointed, but was cut off before he could say a word. Now look at me. Dragon ordered. The pale clerk looked back at the ominous-looking Umbu. Now look back at the baby. The clerk looked back at the baby that was looking around and wriggling in the basket. Now look at me, Dragon ordered again. The clerk looked back at the Umbu only to find his masked face 4 inches away from his own. Dragon quirked his head to the side, eliciting a stray crack from his neck. Now, who seems more life-threatening? Be honest now. The seemingly psychotic Umbu asked. The clerk pointed a shaky finger at the Umbu. Why you? The Umbu went silent for what seemed like minutes, staring at the clerk, then threw his head back and laughed heartily before ruffling the clerk's hair. You're a smart guy. I like smart guys, he said before taking the basket and going back to the dumbfounded group. Weren't you going to shop? Ren shook off her stupor. Yeah? She turned to the still gawking genin and pulled out the stipend she generously got from the Hokage for training expenses and split it in 3. Alright guys, kunai and shuriken, at least 3 sets of each. Don't go blowing the rest on explosive tags. Hiroshi snapped out of his trance and nabbed his cut and darted off to look around at the rows of weapons. Nanami took hers and went off to keep an eye on Hiroshi. Karinai quietly took hers and went directly to where the kunai and shuriken sets were. Rin and Dragon just browsed the aisles. Maybe you should consider a weapon, Rin. Dragon said offhandedly while looking at a Naginata. Rin just shook her head. Don't need one. When you're a medic nin like me, your hands are just as deadly as any weapon, she said back as she held her hand in front of her face in a karate chop form. Dragon looked thoughtful before nodding in understanding. That, huh? Nasty little technique I've had the fortune of not coming up against yet. As they kept talking, another person strolled into the store casually before setting eyes on the 2 Umbu members walking out of an aisle with a basket. Rin and Dragon stopped equally as fast, staring at their squad member Kakashi. The tension between the 3 was thick as fog. Kakashi turned his eyes to the basket, and his gaze turned to ice. Rin's brow creased and her eyes narrowed. You have something to say, Kakashi? She asked in a threatening tone. He just shrugged off the threat with a condescending look. No, I don't. In fact, I was just leaving. He spitefully replied before turning around and walking back out of the store. In their standoff, the 2 adults didn't notice the genin came back when they felt the ki leaking from their caretaker. Rin-san, who was that? Nanami asked cautiously. Rin realized how she looked to the genin and set them straight. That was someone you shouldn't trust. If you see him anywhere by the house, or if he tries talking to you, tell me, alright? The genin noticed the seriousness in Rin's voice and nodded. Rin nodded back in satisfaction and let loose a breath before eyeing Hiroshi's items. What are those? She asked, pointing to 2 small rods with what appeared to be rubber grips. Hiroshi seemed to perk up these. He asked, putting down his other items and holding one in each hand. With downward swings with both arms, the rods telescoped and tripled in length. Hiroshi grinned. They're telescoping batons. Nice and heavy and a hell of a lot cooler than those used tanfa I was using. I can even make hidden pockets in my sleeves to conceal them. He shouted excitedly. Strange weapons for a shinobi, Rin thought. I thought you said you were a kenjutsu user? Hiroshi shrugged. What else was I supposed to call it? Donkijutsu? He asked with a hint of sarcasm. Rin sheepishly scratched her cheek while Dragon snatched one of the batons away from Hiroshi and tested it out. It's not a clean kill weapon, but with its weight, it would sure put someone in a world of hurt, he described to the genin as he handed it back. Rin shrugged. Well, it's not explosive tags, so I guess it works. Alright, pay for your stuff and meet me outside, Rin said as she took the basket from Dragon and both left the store, Dragon waving at the wary clerk. The Genin came out of the store a few minutes later, and the group made their way back to an unoccupied training ground, and Dragon left to finally sleep. Training ground 16. Rin set Naruto's basket under the shade of a tree and stretched to warm up. Alright guys, we'll start with a warm-up. 5 laps around the field, then 50 jumping jacks, 50 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 crunches. Then after that, I want to see what you guys can do, she stated plainly. Nanami nodded enthusiastically while Hiroshi and Karinai paled. An hour later, Nanami panted, content that she was finally able to exercise again, while Hiroshi and Karinai gasped for air. Rin shook her head at the half-dead Genin. Well shit guys, this was just a warm-up. I don't know what your routine was before, but it obviously sucked. She chided as she cooled down. After the Genin caught their breath, Rin stood in front of them. Alright guys, I want a grasp on your genjutsu and ninjutsu arsenal. Let's start with you Hiroshi, she said as she looked to the boy. Said boy scratched his nose as he replied embarrassingly, I only know the mandatory 5 basics from the academy. Rin's eyebrows rose. 5? I thought there was still 6 mandatory. Which ones do you know? Hiroshi listed them off with his fingers. Shunshin no jutsu, body flicker, Kawarimi no jutsu, body replacement, Noanuk no jutsu, rope escape, Bunshin no jutsu, clone, and Henj no jutsu, transformation. Rin could only pinch her nose in disappointment. They removed the mandate from Kararemino no jutsu, cloak of invisibility? What the hell is wrong with them? Lowering the standards in the academy will lead to cannon fodder getting through and Genin not being ready for their first C rank. Nanami decided to put in her own 2 cents. At least it's still keeping out all the fangirls, she said with a shiver, which the rest of her team shared. They all knew what fangirls equaled. Fangirls equaled very weak and useless kunoichi, which equaled dead fangirls, rape victims, or even dead squads. Rin hoped she'd never see the day fangirls started pouring into the ranks. Rin cleared her throat. Anyways, how about you Nanami? She asked looking at said girl. Nanami seemed to cheer up from their earlier contemplations. I know the basic Academy 5, plus Megan, Narakumi no Jutsu, Demonic Illusion, Hell Viewing Technique, plus Doton, Dorihiki no Jutsu, Earth Style Wall, and Doton, Iwadikyu no Jutsu, Earth Style, hidden among rocks, she finished with pride. Rin was surprised at the Genin. She had a B-ranked defensive jutsu in her arsenal? Can you show me the last 2? She asked the Genin. Nanami nodded before going through 3 hand signs ending on dog, Doton, Dorihiki. She proclaimed before her cheeks bulged and she started spitting out large amounts of mud that turned into a large rock wall in front of her. Once it had totally solidified, she clamped her hands into another sign before stating with her back against the stone wall and sinking/melding into it. She then reappeared on the other side of the wall. Rin was impressed. For a taijutsu fighter, she had a solid grasp on Doton techniques and used a precise amount of chakra to boot. Rin figured her chakra control was precise since the girl had low reserves, which was confirmed as Nanami walked away from the wall and dropped to a sitting position while catching her breath. I have to say Nanami, I'm impressed. Where did you learn those? She asked the tired girl. Nanami gave off a prideful smile which faltered a bit when asked where she got them. Our old sensei figured I could incorporate them into my taijutsu and also play a defensive role for the group, she explained. Rin nodded approvingly. Doton is one of the most defensive affinities and can be a blessing when fighting particularly dangerous fighters. Me for example, she stated as the Genin looked at her puzzlingly. She lifted one hand in front of her and it stated emanating a bluish-white aura around her hand. This is called the chakra scalpel. It's a very useful technique for a medic nin like me because it allows me to do surgeries without even breaking the skin. It takes a lot of practice, but it can also be used for combat. Just by touching a certain part of the body, I can sever muscles, nerves, blood vessels, and damage internal organs without even leaving a scratch on your skin. Having a Doton technique take a blow for you instead of blocking a strike can mean the difference between life and death, she explained to the girl, who was now looking at her with awe. That's as deadly as the Hyuga clan's Jukin. Can you teach me that, Rin-san? The young kunoichi asked with hope in her voice. Rin's sweat dropped from the intense admiration the girl was giving off. Hey. Only someone with medic training could use the technique correctly. She gently broke to the Genin. Nanami deflated a little bit before a new determination entered her eyes. Then I can become the squad's medic. Since I'm mainly a taijutsu fighter and the defensive position of the group, I could learn medical jutsu to fill another role. The Genin stated excitedly. Rin quirked an eyebrow at this. Usually medic nins were dedicated healers and frowned upon filling multiple roles, since they were supposed to heal, not fight. Rin didn't want to shoot down the girl's enthusiasm, but she had to know what she was getting into. Being a medic takes a lot of hard work and knowledge. Plus you may have excellent chakra control, but you have a low reserve. Trying to fulfill 3 roles would be hell. Not to mention medic nins are usually dedicated in their field. She explained to the kunoichi. Nanami's determination never faltered as she smiled smugly. Well, that's what we're training for, isn't it, Rin-san? I just have to build my reserves along with my taijutsu. I can be the team's multi-role field medic. She stated like it was simple. Rin wanted to refuse but took a moment to think. I've never seen that much vigor in the girl. Maybe it will help her get over her problems, even if she doesn't make it all the way. And even if she didn't, she would still be able to treat wounds. Konoha could always use more medically trained nins as well. Rin played the advantages through her head before nodding. Alright. But I want you to be able to name off every part of the body and be able to heal a person before I even teach you how to use the chakra scalpel. And I want your reserves tripled by that time as well, understood? She commanded. Nanami snapped to attention and slaughtered Rin, the excitement still in her eyes. Hi Rin-sensei. This caught Rin by surprise. She guessed she shouldn't be. She was teaching and training them, as temporary as it may be. Anyways, now our unique situation, she said as she turned to Karinai, who was looking particularly downtrodden. Karinai-chan, I want you to use the genjutsu that you know on me. Rin said. Karinai turned ashen at the thought of using genjutsu against her own sensei before Rin reassured her. I'm a jounin Karinai-chan. I will be able to get out of anything you can throw at me. Karinai seemed to pout at Rin's reassurances before going through hand signs and glaring at Rin. The wind picked up for a second before Rin found herself in the training field alone. Rin nodded to herself. Megan, Nikoni Arezu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, false surroundings technique. A good foundation for a genjutsu user. Kai! She yelled, dispelling the genjutsu. Karinai was a little surprised. Not that Rin got out of it, but that she could identify the genjutsu she used so easily. Feeling a little miffed, she immediately went through the hand signs for her other genjutsu. Ending on Ox, she burst into flower petals which attacked Rin. As Rin flailed around, the flower petals reformed into Karinai, who had her arms wrapped around the waist of Rin's in a tanuki statue. Her confusion faded when saw a flash come from beside her and looked to see Rin holding a camera with a toothy grin on her face. That has to be the cutest thing I've ever seen, Kurei-chan. The Jonin cooed, this time snapping a picture of the raven-haired girl with clenched teeth, balled fists, and fire burning in her eyes. Of course Rin was trying to see if anger could get the kunoichi out of her impression of a monk. Apparently it didn't work as Karinai stomped back over to the other two genin, who quickly stifled their giggles, and sat down in a huff. Rin ceased her laughter. Don't be that way, Karinai-chan. I'm actually very impressed. I haven't seen that genjutsu used in a while. Genjutsu, Hanakairi Nuko, genjutsu, flower petal escape, am I correct? She asked the cooling genin. With a cute little pout she nodded her head. You know, Karinai, it would have been stronger if you would have been able to proclaim the jutsu, Rin stated, hoping the genin would try quicker to talk. Hiroshi looked thoughtful at Rin's last words. Rin-sensei, why is it that some jutsus require hand seals and announcements, and some don't? He asked curiously. Rin happily answered the question. That is a very good question, Hiroshi-kun. And the answer is chakra memory, she said to the still puzzled genin. Rin went into lecture mode. Chakra is made of physical and mental energies, as everybody knows. What many younger ninja don't know is that their chakra networks and the chakra within retains physical and mental traits. In layman's terms, your chakra can remember a jutsu if you use it enough, making you able to shorten the sign sequence, forego the pronunciations, or possibly both, she stated, looking at the odd genin, but this depends on how much chakra, or precision the jutsu takes. Smaller jutsus like the shunshin can be done without any signs or announcements, depending on the length of distance, in a matter of months. Bigger jutsus, like Nanami's Doryahiki, can take years of use before you can start shortening the sequences, but it just depends on how much you do, or are able to, use it. Genjutsu don't require a lot of chakra, but a lot more precision than ninjutsu. The chakra memory has to be near perfect before the genjutsu can be unannounced and still stick, and absolutely perfect before you can use one hand sign and no announcement, and have it work flawlessly. Karinai could use it with no announcement, but had to use all the hand signs, and still it was not in tip-top form. She has only been working on it for a year and a half now. Foregoing the verbal announcements is one of the harder ways to shorten and conceal a jutsu after all. Nanami looked puzzled. If we have hand signs, why do we need the announcement? She asked Rin. Hand signs and announcements are one and the same, they are both physical and mental expressions. You use your brain and hands to make the signs, and you use your brain and mouth to say the words, appealing to both natures of your chakra to mold it into the jutsu you are thinking and expressing. The reason both are needed at first is because one action, hand signs, primes the jutsu, and the other action, announcement, discharges the jutsu. Gaining experience causes chakra memory to come into play, making less physical expression needed and just the mental aspect, meaning fewer hand signs will prime the jutsu, and thinking the name of the jutsu will discharge it. This kind of stuff takes lots of experience. As said before, Hiroshi looked like a light bulb went off in his head, which is why Nanami can use a Wagakure no jutsu without announcing it. Because she uses it a lot, and it doesn't take a lot of chakra? Rin nodded to the boy before quirking an eyebrow suddenly. She uses it a lot? She asked curiously. Hiroshi nodded vigorously. Yup. Heck, the day she finally got it down, We had to watch her Atakori pop into one rock and out another Atakori for 4 hours before Sensei finally caught her and dragged her back to practice ITI. He yelped as Nanami swatted him in the back of the head while sporting an embarrassed blush. Nanami seemed to have another question as well. What about the Hyuga clan's Kaiten and the Yandame's Rasengan? They didn't need seals, but they still announced them. Rin was ready to answer the question right after the Genin finished. Those techniques are all chakra control and chakra manipulation. They're just taking raw chakra and forming it into a jutsu. Since it's just chakra, they don't need seals to turn it into a fire jutsu or something like that, and I don't think they really need to announce them either. I think they announce it as a sort of pride or respect for it, considering it takes a lot of hard work for a pure chakra manipulation jutsu. And since it's already formed, there's no harm in shouting it out, I guess. Rin said as she shrugged. The Genin seemed satisfied with the answer. So now what, Rin-sensei? Asked Nanami. Now, taijutsu practice, she said with a crooked smirk. Nanami perked up while Hiroshi and Karinai slumped down. An hour and 3 bruised Genin later, she had a good grasp on their taijutsu. Nanami's was surprisingly good for a rookie Genin. While Hiroshi and Karinai were so average, they got the average-looking award for being so fucking average. It was to be expected, Rin thought as she fed Naruto under a tree. One was a Dankijutsu user, and the other was an aspiring Genjutsu mistress. Taijutsu wouldn't be among their strong points or their biggest concerns. Hiroshi would only have to worry about taijutsu if the enemy got his weapons out of his hands, which was why weapon users are told to never ever let go of their weapons. It was the key rule of a weapon user, with the second being, when in doubt, aim for the crotch. She still didn't know why the hell that was a rule at all, let alone being the second one. Nandemo, Karinai would only have to worry about taijutsu if her genjutsu failed her, and even then would probably retreat instead of fight hand to hand. Genjutsu users tend to be lightweights on the field and not the most physical of people, so no surprise that Karinai would fall in with the category. While the average taijutsu could be overlooked, it presented Rin with clear problems. While she had 1 or 2 genjutsu she could teach Karinai, and possibly help her with stealth, she had nothing else that she could think of to teach her. Possibly some first aid jutsu? She did have the chakra control for it. Nanami would be the easiest to train because she was adamant about learning medic jutsu and the chakra scalpel, meaning Rin could reform her taijutsu to complement the technique like hers did. So all in all, she had her whole library of medical knowledge and combat forms she could teach the girl. But then there was Hiroshi. Rin had no experience with kenjutsu or dankijutsu or whatever the hell it was. He was a trap user, a strategist, and a baton twirler. None of them Rin could give any advice or training on. It showed how narrow her expertise and skills actually were. She would make a horrible jounin sensei if she ever lead a genin team. She only had a few ninjutsu outside of what used to be the basics, a couple genjutsu, specialized taijutsu, and just enough of the rest to get to jounin and umbu. Rin seemed to reflect on herself and her career option in a not-so-majestic light. As a medic nin, she was always told that you were a medic first and foremost, and to leave the fighting to your teammates so you have chakra to heal them. Dodge, defend yourself, and heal. That was your job. Rin was quickly deciding it had to be the worst idea anybody thought of. Rin thought she could finally see the flaw the Sandaime saw decades ago in Tsunade's idea of having a dedicated medic nin on every 4-person cell, in the regards that, while the medic nin may be able to heal his or her teammates, and be able to defend themselves, it would cut the attacking force down to 3, or even 2. It creates a weak link in the team, someone not trained to their full potential. Like what happened the day Obito died. Maybe if she had been a combatant first, and a medic nin second. She looked at Nanami, who had just got done thoroughly handing Hiroshi his ass. Not a medic nin, a multi-role field medic? Huh. Maybe the genin aren't the only people that need training. She mused deeply before setting her attention back on the genin, putting a smile on her face. Good work, guys. Now I have a good grasp of your skills. In the next few days, I'll be setting up your individual training. Until then, we'll work on general physical training, chakra control, and teamwork building. Can you all do tree climbing? Rin asked, eliciting a nod from all the genin. Good. We're going to play treetop tag, grumble. Hey, after we have lunch, she finished in mild embarrassment to her own stomach, grumbling. With that, the group got up and went to look for a restaurant. The next day, 11 a.m., Rin was heading towards the Hokage Tower. She needed to see the Hokage about getting into the archives, and finding someone to help her train them. Fortunately or unfortunately, some came over to visit, so she left Naruto and the genin in her care. She reached the tower and announced her wish to see the Hokage to the receptionist. Umbu and Jounins usually got right in, but he was already in a meeting. Rin nodded and sat down to wait, reflecting on her findings yesterday afternoon. They were a good team. Their teamwork and coordination could use a little tuning, but considering it was their first exercise as a team was surprising. Hiroshi's boasts about being a strategist and a trap user were not overzealous. The kid had a good grasp on churning out plans, setting traps to capture or drive an opponent, and use of the terrain to get the team advantage. He had spent most of his childhood with Nanami, and easily incorporated Karinai into his plans. Nanami's use of Awagakure no Jutsu had almost caught Rin a couple times, and the girl's physical stamina was nothing to scoff at either. Karinai may not have the physical advantage of Nanami, or the strategic mind of Hiroshi, but she was clever, tenacious, and resourceful. She used her genjutsu, ones that Ren identified easily only hours before, and used them in ways that made them not so easily seen or evaded for that matter. Layering a genjutsu over herself in a trap-laden area was one trick. Hiding regular clones under genjutsu and popping out of branch of leaves close to it was another. Those first few rounds were a bit catchy for Rin, the next few were very close calls, and she was using half of her actual abilities. Half. While Rin could surely say if she were to take on a Genin team full-time, she'd want a team just like them, it showed glaring problems in her own training. Half her abilities should keep a squad of Chunin on their toes, not Genin. Her attention went to previous thoughts about being a medic Nin, and she decided that she needed to build up her skills along with her 3 charges. The secretary brought Rin out of her thoughts. Rin-san. The Hokage will see you now. Rin nodded to the secretary and made her way towards the Hokage office, accidentally bumping into a Chunin that easily a head taller than her. Ah, Gomen. I wasn't watching where I was going. Miss. Rin collected herself and looked at the familiar-looking Chunin with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Rin. Inuzuka Rin. And you are? The Chunin smirked. Saratobi-asuma. Well, Rin-san, I guess you're here to see Pops, so I won't keep you for now, he replied with a chuckle and went through the secretary office doors. Rin stared at the doors with a dumbfounded expression. Did he just hit on me? Rin asked herself. That hasn't happened since Obito. Rin shook off her stupor and made her way to the Hokage. Hiruzen had just gotten done with a meeting with his son Asuma. Well, it was less of a meeting and more of the same arguing they have done since he became a Chunin. Differences in opinions, his role as Shinobi, and more lately, the pain in the ass missions he was receiving. What the hell happened to the little kid that used to jump around asking for a new jutsu? He asked retrospectively. Sensing his next question of the day approaching his door, he wrinkled his features. When the door opened, he was surprised to see Rin there. He had only seen her a few days ago, so what could have happened in that time? Had she stumbled upon his genius? Rin-chan. I'm surprised to see you this quickly. Is there something wrong? He asked as she sat in the chair across from his desk. Rin looked nervous. No and yes, Hokage-sama. It seems like their emotional problems can be overcome given time, even if they are keeping me up at night right now, and they're a great help around the house. It's their training that has me worried. The Sandame quirked an eyebrow. Anything I can help with? He asked cautiously. Well, I need someone to train Hiroshi. He uses batons as a weapon, and is the strategist of the group. I could also use 4 pieces of chakra paper and access to the tower archives, she stated. Hiruzen saw a puzzle in the requests. Why do you need access to the archives? And you said 4 pieces of chakra paper. Who's the other one for? He asked. Rin scratched her cheek. The other piece is for me, so I can find some jutsus and techniques to learn now. The professor was intrigued. If I remember correctly, Rin, you're a medic Nin. Why would you need to learn ninjutsu? He asked, genuinely interested in her explanation. Rin's expression seemed to project recent revelations. First, could you answer a question for me, Hokage-sama? I'll try if I'm able, the wizened leader answered. Rin seemed to take a few moments to form her question. During the Third Shinobi War, when Tsunade-sama proposed putting a medic Nin on every team. What was your reason for turning down the idea? She asked, looking like she already knew the real answer. Saratobi sighed as he picked up his packed pipe and lit it, puffing it before answering. Tsunade was still emotionally devastated from her brother's death when she brought up that proposal, and would not listen to reason. Having a dedicated medic Nin on each team would bring the fighting force down to 3, against a full 4-man combat force. It potentially could lead to more fatalities than could be saved, had we implemented that proposal. And I have a feeling you already knew that, and plays a role in why you are here now. The Sandame stated to the sheepish Jounin. Mana. I've found out how narrow my skills are when trying to train my charges. Hiroshi I can't help with any of his skills, and Karinai I can only teach a few genjutsu, and that's about it. Nanami is really the only one I can really give thorough instruction to, and that's because she wants to learn medical jutsu and pick up my chakra scalpel, and the taijutsu for it. She already plays the role of defense on the team, and she figures she can be the team's multi-role field medic. I think she can do it. But it still leaves the other 2, she replied, feeling a little frustration. Hiruzen grinned. So you want someone to help teach the other 2? And you want to train yourself to be more than just a medic Nin because your skills are limited and want to fill a bigger role. He summarized her explanation. That about sums it up, Hokage-sama, she agreed with her leader's summary. Hiruzen nodded before thinking deeply. Batons and strategy. A devious smirk grew on his face. I may be able to help you, Rin-chan. He might not be available all the time, but I'm sure you could scrounge up some other people to help you as well, he said with what sounded like a hint in his voice. You might want to try teaching other things that complement their specialties as well. After all, not all training is physical, he stated as he grabbed 4 pieces of paper out of his desk. Rin looked incredulous. You have chakra paper in your desk? What else do you have in there? The old Hokage's eyes went wide as he slowly waved his hands in front of himself. It would boggle your mind anyways. I'll call ahead to the archive room and tell them that you're coming. Keep anything you copy safe. Good luck, he said as Rin got up to leave. She bowed. Thank you, Hokage-sama. It means a lot to me, she said as she rose and left. After she did, the Sandame's attitude did a 180 as he rubbed his hands together deviously. Yes, I have the perfect gaki to help. Payback's a bitch, Masuko. A few blocks away, a cigarette-smoking Chunin felt like he should argue with his father over something, but he didn't know what. He shrugged and walked off. Hokage Tower Archives. Rin sighed as she looked at the charred piece of paper between her fingers. Katan, huh? Once of the most offensive elements out there. Not very appealing for a defensive position in a squad, while maybe not totally unappealing, she continued to think to herself as she sat in the archives. Katan was the second most enduring nature to throw at someone, the first being Doton. While wind, lightning, and water disperse, fire tends to stay around until the chakra is depleted, or even cause secondary fires. Enemies aren't very willing to walk through a wall of fire to attack a retreating squad. Maybe it was a good thing after all. She got up and started browsing the sections for fire jutsu. Considering this was the country of fire, there weren't as many in the archives as one would think. This was due to the fact that most of the more exotic and high-power ones belonged solely to the Uchiha, and considering their attitudes towards the rest of the village, it was obvious they weren't keen on sharing anytime soon. This left only the very common ones and the ones that people like the professor himself have invented, to be in the archive. She came upon Gokaki no Jutsu, way too common, too slow, and not large enough. Hozenka no Jutsu just takes the grand fireball and makes it a lot of weaker versions. Though, it would be good as a distraction, she thought compromisingly as she continued on. She came across 4 other jutsus that were even lower in rank and usefulness, causing her to grind her teeth in frustration until she came across 2 scrolls that made her stop dead in her tracks. Katan, Tepamaizu, Fire Release, Flash Flood? Katan, Karya Enden, Fire Release, Fire Dragon Flame Missile? She asked herself. She took them over to a desk and started reading. A grin formed on her face. They were both B-rank techniques, fast, and a wide area of effect. They were perfect. She started copying the instructions into another scroll. Once she finished, she started searching for more things that could help her. After all, she wanted to at least try to play a part in some of their development. Next morning, October 29th, near Rin's temporary residence, Asuma trotted down the street towards the destination his father gave him after the two argued for a half an hour. Apparently, his father's idea of a joke was to take him off missions completely and tell him to help a jounin train some genin. Why the hell can't they train their team themselves? This is why I could never see myself taking on a genin squad. Too much damn work, thought the blunt chunin as he stuck a cigarette between his teeth and fumbled around for his lighter. Before he could even light it, he found himself at the address he was told. He looked at the homey little 2-story house and had one thought: what the hell is a genin team doing here? As he walked up to the door and knocked. The door opened and an intimidating woman with a baby attached to her exposed breast. The obviously Inuzuka woman looked him up and down with a predatory grin. And what can I do for you? Asuma was a little uncomfortable under her gaze. Hokage-sama sent me, he responded. Some grinned at the ammo he just gave her. About damn time he sent the stripper. Well, get in her and start shaking that chisel, as she said happily. Asuma's sweat dropped. No, I'm here to help train the genin, he stated. Some put on a shocked face. Train them to be strippers? They're a little young, don't you think? She asked incredulously. Asuma was starting to get annoyed. No. To train them in combat, he replied. Some put on an incredulous look. Combat? Just what kind of strip club are you sending them to? A vein popped up on Asuma's head as he hissed through his teeth. I'm not sending them to a strip club. This just fueled some to go on. So you're sending them to a bordello? I think combat would be one of the lesser things to teach them in that case, she stated exasperatingly. Asuma just slapped his hand to his forehead in frustration. No! I'm not sending them to a bordello. Sum's face lit up in mock realization. Then it must be an S&M club. Now I can see where the combat training comes in handy, Shej said with a sage-like nod of understanding. Asuma gritted his teeth just a little too hard, and the cigarette filter between his teeth was cut in half. No. I am training them in combat. For missions, he hissed through clenched teeth. Some put her free arm on his shoulder. You look stressed, stripper-san. How about I lay down, and you give me a massage to make the tension go away? But I should warn you, no happy ending. I'm a married woman after all, she harassed the chunin. By this time Asuma looked ready to blow a gasket. Then Rin's voice came from the kitchen. Who are you talking to, Nei-san? She hollered to the front door. Sum turned around to answer her. Some hunk of a stripper came to conscript your genin into his S&M escort service. She smiled sadistically as she heard crashes from the kitchen, and behind her. What? Both Asuma and Rin shouted. Rin marched to the door when she started hearing Sum laughing her head off and saw the chunin that was hitting on her yesterday as well. Sum! That was horrible. You knocked all 3 of them out cold, she scolded. Asuma started calming down. So I take it you're their sensei? He stated more than asked. Rin nodded. Temporary sensei anyways. I take it you're the one Hokage-sama sent to help? She asked, getting a nod from the visibly relaxed Junin, who then looked from the revealed clan head Tsum to Rin, then back to Tsum. He opened his mouth but Rin cut him to the chase. Adopted, she stated simply, gaining a nod of deep understanding from the young Sarutobi. Tsum pouted. You both act like that's a good thing, she huffed. Rin and Asuma's sweat dropped. Anyways, now that you're here, I guess I should rouse the Genin. Ooh baby, Tsum! Rin snapped. Tsum waved it off. Alright. I see you want to have some fun with your gigolo. So she pulled Naruto off of her with an audible pop, leaving her breast exposed. Here you go, Nei-chan, she said, handing off Naruto to Rin. I have to get going. Are you getting a good view? She asked the Chunin, who got caught gawking, who immediately turned his head with a blush. Sheesh kid, you act just like your old man. You're lucky. Next time I'm gonna charge you to CM, she harassed Asuma before tucking her breast back in and waving to her sister as she left. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, sis. A vein popped on Rin's head. That's an awfully short list. She shouted at the retreating woman, who was now laughing her head off. Asuma finally came out of his prior stupor. Your sister is really? Yes, she replied before he finished. Are all the Anuzu? Pretty much. When she said charge me, did she really? You have no idea, she replied with a slump of her shoulders. Asuma just stood there frozen in his thoughts before shaking his head and bringing his attention back to Rin and the QB vessel. So you're the Kunoichi Pops suckered into raising him, he stated with a look of understanding, until he took on a puzzled look. Then what the hell are you doing with the Genin team? He asked. Rin breathed a deep sigh. A story worth sitting down for. Come on, I have to bring the Genin back to consciousness, she said as she waved him in with her free hand. Half an hour later, Asuma couldn't help but chuckle at the predicament Rin was in. First, raising a controversial baby, then rehabbing a Genin team for the free labor. I have to ask Rin-san, what are you going to get stuck with next? He asked humorously while sticking a cigarette in his mouth, which was quickly nabbed out by Rin, obviously a chain-smoking, perverted Chunin. She fired back at a sheepish Sarutobi before crushing the cigarette. These things will kill you, she chided. Asuma chuckled. If I'm lucky? What's the average lifespan of a shinobi again? He asked. Rin slightly grimaced before answering. 21. Asuma nodded. If it gets to 40, I'll think about giving it up. Anyways, the Genin? He directed towards the now fully conscious trio picking themselves up from around the kitchen table. Right, she started as she pointed at the two girls. Nanami I will be teaching the most. She's taking a path right down my avenue of expertise. Karinai is a genjutsu specialist, Asuma supplied as he finally fixated a look at Karinai. Rin gave him a raised eyebrow, which caused him to supply an answer. Same crop of graduates. Rin nodded. Saves me the trouble. I can teach her a few things. I was hoping you could help with her physical attributes a bit. Hiroshi, she started, pointing at the male member of the team, is the one I need help with the most. He's a strategist, trap user, and she looked back at the Genin, who was concentrating hard on what she said next, before continuing. Saidonkujutsu user, she finished, Hiroshi smiling like a Cheshire cat. Asuma quirked an eyebrow. Blunt weapons? Rin nodded. Batons, to be more precise, she said as she nodded to Hiroshi, who was more than happy to show him. He dropped his arms to his sides and pulled two strings that were hanging out of the oversized sleeves of his coat. Two snaps could be heard and then two falling items could be seen falling down the sleeves until they rested in Hiroshi's hands, which he then brought his hands in front of himself and swung out, telescoping the batons. Asuma chuckled. I'll give you a 10 for the bitch and draw, but it's going to take some definite jury rigging work to try and make a style for them. It's not exactly a tonfa and it's not a knife, but it would take moves and strikes from both. Traps is all experience, physics, and creativity. And strategy, well, could always do what Pops did and teach him shogi or Chinese checkers, depending on what type of strategist he is. Does he have a futon affinity? Asuma asked. Rin blinked before remembering the chakra paper. She went to the bag she used at the archives and pulled out the 3 sheets before giving them to the Genin. Channel your chakra into those. Nanami started first. The paper dried up and crumpled. Doton. Pretty obvious considering your knack for Doton jutsus, Rin stated to Nanami. She then smelled something burning. She looked to Karinai, whose paper was on fire. Karinai quickly flipped the piece of paper until it was out as Rin spoke. Katon, are you sure you're not a relative of the Uchiha? She asked, taking the girl into perspective. Karinai just shrugged and Rin shook her head. Rin-sensei. What does this mean? Asked Hiroshi. Rin looked to him just to slump her shoulders at the crinkled piece of paper. Right. It means you have the rarest affinity in Konoha, Hiroshi, and the direct opposite of the one Asuma was hoping for, she stated disappointingly. By this time Asuma had walked up to the Genin. Yeah, I don't have a clue about that element. I don't even know if Pops has enough knowledge on it to help. Do you know any Rin-san? He asked the cringing Jounin. Only one. My old teammate, and I don't want any of my group within a city block of him for the moment. Asuma looked surprised. You mean Kakashi, right? Something happened? Rin pointed to Naruto, who she had put back in his basket. He tried to kill him, and we think he's responsible for spilling the beans to most of the village. She stated with anger in her voice. Yeah, doesn't sound like an ideal solution. It looks like we either skip it, or try to find enough materials to let himself learn it. If he did, then he could apply it to his batons during a fight he finished as he turned to Hiroshi, who was wide-eyed and contemplating. Shock batons? Hiroshi asked Asuma, who nodded. Hiroshi was rubbing his hands together and chuckling darkly, much to the dismay of the females in the room. Boys and toys. Rin sighed out in annoyance. Asuma cleared his throat. Anyways, we should probably continue this out in the training fields. Some more sun could do you guys some good. Especially you, Rin-sen, you're starting to look like a geisha, and you're not even wearing the makeup. He prodded fun at the annoyed jounin. That's Rin-senpai to you, Chunin Asuma. She huffed. Asuma waved it off as he lit a cigarette and made his way outside. Hi, Rin-chan, he replied back at the slightly smoldering Rin and 3 genin who seemed to have moved a few feet away from her. Damn flirt, she grumbled as she picked up the basket and motioned for the genin to follow her. Undisclosed location underneath Konoha at an undisclosed time. A bandaged man was racking his brain. Over a month ago, his plan of securing a piece of leverage against Sharingan no Kakashi was foiled. He had everything set up to send Kakashi's surviving teammate on a false mission so as to capture and indoctrinate her into his organization. Then the cue came. The plan was ruined. He thought he could compromise by kidnapping Uzumaki Kushina and faking her death during the chaos of the event. But no, she actually died in childbirth. And any leverage against the Hokage was lost when the Yondaime sacrificed himself. Then, he thought he could go back to the plan of capturing Rin. But no! The Sandaime had her inside the village, watching a baby he would love to get his hands on. The QB vessel. He was only guarded by a jounin medic Nin, and 3 genin from the reports. It was a big risk to try and kidnap him nonetheless, but one that held too big of a benefit not to take. With his list of tools short, and his orphanage only in the beginning stages of being built, he needed strength. Something he could get out of a Jinchuruki, possibly as early as the age of 6. With his mind made up, he called forth his best tool. Noboru, an intimidating-looking black-clad man, appeared before Danzo in a kneeling position. Yes, Danzo-sama. A file was thrown onto the floor in front of him. I want you to apprehend the QB vessel. Inside the folder you will find its most current picture, its location, and a list of the shinobi caring for it. No fatalities would be preferable, but if you have to kill one of the genin to capture it, make it look like IWA was behind it. The old warhawk finished, throwing an Iwa's headband on top of the folder. As you command, Danzo-sama, the shinobi responded before picking up the items and fading back into the darkness. Danzo picked his tea up and took a sip, imagining the powerful tool he would have in a short while. November 15th, 1 hour before sunset. The crisp autumn night air was rolling into the fields as Rin's little group wrapped up training. It had almost been 3 weeks since she and the genin had started training, and she could definitely see results. Nanami kept her determination since that day, and has been studying the medical books whenever she had a free moment. Rin had been helping her revamp her taijutsu into one more suited for the chakra scalpel, and she was taking to it like a fish to water. Rin figured in a few more days she would teach the girl the technique, along with Mystic Palm, and start with live training and endurance. It was one thing to be able to do the chakra scalpel, it was another to use it as a weapon. It took high amounts of concentration and experience to make the chakra scalpel stable enough for the stresses of combat. But with the vigor the girl was showing, Rin put her money on the girl learning it in a month. Not that it was the only thing Rin was teaching the girl. Rin had managed to kidnap Dragon for a few hours and sweet-talk him into teaching Nanami Doton, Doryuso, Earth Release, Rising Stone Spears. It wasn't exactly a totally defensive jutsu, but it was short-range so she could use it to deter pursuit by the enemy. After Dragon had shown her the jutsu, Nanami had decided to practice it to the point of exhaustion, much to the dismay of everybody else. Thankfully she had only doubled her reserves by that time and was only able to make a small mountain range of spikes. But sometime during the chaos, Dragon had escape air left. Karinai was not as much as a leap in progress as Naomi was. Rin was able to teach her Megan, Nija Kokoni Areze no Jutsu, Demonic Illusion, Double False Surroundings Technique, and some tips on how to make her own genjutsus, and that was about it besides chakra control, building up reserves, and physical fitness, which the girl sorely hated apparently. Karinai was in the process of creating her own genjutsu, so Rin didn't feel completely useless to the girl. She could always teach her the jutsu she acquired from the archives. But right now the chakra requirements would flatline the girl, so it was something for the future. Rin had learned all 3 of the Katon jutsus she copied from the archives, and had them down pat. She could only manage 2 dragons with the Karya Enden, but for a recently medic Nin only Kunoichi, that was pretty good. She didn't even faint from chakra exhaustion anymore from attempting it. Katon, Tepamizu, Fire Release, Flash Flood, was truly amazing, and had definitely earned its namesake. White-hot fire flowing like liquid, filling cracks, following corners, finding its way into almost any defense. Rin was never really a jutsu fanatic, but even she had to admit that her panties were a little moist after seeing what it could do. The Uchiha would rape their own mothers for a jutsu like that. Oh, and of course, she learned Hosenka no Jutsu. But it paled in comparison with the first 2. She had also taken up the tanto. She figured she wore the damn thing in Umbu for the last year and had no idea how to use it. True, she used the chakra scalpel as her weapon, but it would be foolish to rely on something that takes chakra. She might run out, or she might get in a fight with someone who could hinder her chakra flow. A fight with a Hyuga would be a clear example. So she would have a backup in case. It never hurt to learn something new anyways. But as much as she had started rounding herself out, none of it helped with the last Genin. Hiroshi. Hiroshi was a sore spot for Rin. She had nothing she could teach him besides the basics. A monkey could teach him that. Achoo. Rin looked up to see Hiroshi frantically wiping his face off with the sleeves of his coat and Asuma rubbing his nose. Akami Asuma-sensei. That's disgusting. Cover next time, will you? Hiroshi complained. Asuma sheepishly scratched his cheek. Gomen Hiroshi. Some cute girl must be talking about me, Asuma Rin thought with a bit of resentment. Since the first day, Asuma had grown on Hiroshi like a fungus, and vice versa. Putting herself in Hiroshi's shoes, she could understand why though. Being in a house with 3 girls, and the only other boy being not even 2 months old would be kind of a downer, even if Nanami was closer to him than Rin had seen any sort of friends be. So she couldn't fault him for wanting to have another male to talk to. It was what Asuma was for Hiroshi that irked Rin, that being the perfect teacher. Asuma was a godsend for Hiroshi's choice in weapons, to the point the two of them already had a rudimentary style for fighting with batons. In strategy, Asuma was teaching him Go, Chinese checkers, and shogi, but that was just the cake, not the icing. The icing was he had learned of Hiroshi's love for geography and swung him into a whole new category of strategy. Asuma would bring over topographical maps and simulate mock battles on them, making Hiroshi use geography in his strategy. Blow this bridge, ambush this supply line, dig in here, reinforce this front, and so on. He also used Hiroshi's trap skills with this in hot exercises. Where to put up traps, what kind, and how many. Then they would see if the plans worked. As much as Rin loved to see a paint-covered Asuma, she realized she felt something she hadn't in a while. Jealousy. Inuzuka Rin was jealous. She could do nothing for Hiroshi, while he could do everything. She knew she shouldn't feel like this, considering it was her who asked for the help, but right now he was definitely the better teacher at the moment. Nanami was Rin's best student only because she took an interest in what Rin knew. Asuma's specialties were close enough to Hiroshi's that the Chunin could teach him on a detailed level. He was also a fire user, so technically he could teach Karinai a few things as well. He also had a very aggressive taijutsu style that Rin was sure Nanami grrr. I feel like pulling my hair out. I should look at the positive things. Like the fact that at least Asuma isn't teaching Hiroshi his Sarutobi-style perversion. Despite his inexpertise at the hands of Neisan, he's definitely a close second in the arts of flirting and teasing. She thought, Achoo, itei. That was a lit cigarette. Hiroshi screamed. Asuma was now trying to calm down a Genin with a red mark in the middle of his forehead. Gomen Hiroshi. I'll say this, whoever this girl is needs a spanking, Asuma joked. Rin sprang up with a furious blush before realizing what she just set her up for. Asuma turned to her while Hiroshi left over to Nanami, still nursing his head. Oh, so it was you, Rin-chan. But you already get spankings considering it's your birthday today, he teased the dumbfounded Kunoichi. Why, you read my file? How the hell did you even get it? She shrieked. Asuma put on a knowing smile. The Sandame's my dad, of course. So I know when he leaves his office, his passwords and blood seals are useless, he stated matter-of-factly. Rin tried to play it off. Alright, so you found out my birthday. I'm 3 years older than you, so stop flirting, Gaki. She growled at him. It only egged him on. Don't be that way, Rin-chan. I don't mind if you're older than me. Plus, while you may be 18, you still blush like a schoolgirl, he teased the Jounin, who started sputtering, trying to come up with a retort, but just ended up blushing like a schoolgirl. Asuma kept on though. Besides, birthdays mean free drinks at the bars, so why don't we hit the town tonight? Rin was incredulous. Me, go drinking with you? Asuma jumped on it. I'll take that as a yes. Pick you up at 8:30. Ja. He blurted out before going up in a swirl of leaves. Rin's mouth was agape as she stared at where he was. The Genin walked up, looking at her, before Hiroshi spoke up. So you're going on a date with Asuma-sensei, Rin-sensei? She just turned to the Genin with the same look on her face. I am? That's what it sounded like, Rin-sensei. You have to admit, he is pretty cute, Nanami piped in with a small blush. He is? She got back in stereo from both Rin and Hiroshi. Nanami just shrugged her shoulders with a nervous chuckle. Rin shook her head. I guess I should get out of the house more. And the Gakis have proven to be trustworthy around Naruto. What the hell, why not? Anyways, let's get home. Unless we're eating ration bars for diner? She asked jokingly. Their response was to pick her up and carry her off back to the house. Oh, I can walk by myself, you know. Indeed, they were progressing nicely. Oh make, I'm going to kill her. It had to be her, thought Rin dangerously, while sporting a cherry red blush as she laid in her bed trying to sleep. Muffled moans, grunts, and whimpers could be heard coming from Nanami and Hiroshi's room. Ever since Rin had left the Genin with Tsum that day, the very same night, Rin started hearing the two experiment. Karinai seemed to sleep right through it, but Rin couldn't for the life of her for one simple reason: hearing and smelling it was frustrating her to no end. For lack of a better word, Rin was a virgin, meaning only she never had a man's thing in her. Her hymen was long gone, as any virgin kunoichi past Chunin could tell you well if she didn't kill you first, so the goings-on definitely made her well damn curious. She folded her pillows over her ears and tried to ignore the smoldering itch that had seemed to have crept up between her legs. Next day, noon, Rin was upstairs, simmering as she folded her laundry. She had been doing laundry all day and, frustratingly, it still didn't seem to do the trick. Maybe she had picked up some of the less desirable Inuzuka traits, because she could surely say she felt like she was in heat. Nanami's glowing cheerfulness that morning hadn't helped, either had Hiroshi's limp. Her thoughts were cut short, as she caught herself subconsciously pushing herself into the edge of the dresser. "Aerg!" she growled in frustration with herself. She stared at the wall for a moment before shifting her gaze to that closet. She hesitated before her itch told her otherwise. It abandoned property, right? So what's the harm in looking through it, she convinced herself. She slowly made her way over to the door of the closet, and then put her hand on the knob. She took a breath and turned the knob. What greeted her looked like a miniature adult toy shop. Lingerie of every kind, condoms, bedroom bondage gear, aphrodisiacs, lotions, things she couldn't describe, and of course vibrators. Heat radiated off of Rin from a full-body blush as she forced herself to look through the vibrators, still in their boxes. She mechanically turned her head to one called the Rabbit. With a shaky hand, she picked up the box and clumsily opened it, pulling out the alien-looking device. Butterflies churned in her stomach as she studied it. These beads must be for, and this extension must be to stimulate my ha. Before she knew it, she was already walking over to the bed with it. With a newfound curiosity, she dropped her pair of shorts and peeled her already damp thong away from her hairless crotch, thong or pubic hair, never both after all, leaving her in a black t-shirt. She laid on the bed and studied it closer before flipping the switch. The vibrator sprung to life with buzzing and shaking. Rin bit her lip, before parting her legs a bit, and moving the shaking hand holding the buzzing wand to the entrance of her womanhood. With only a simple prod of the end of the vibrator onto her, sparks ignited on every part of her lower body. She gasped at the sensation running through her. She had never felt like this before and became more courageous. She slowly teased the entrance of her tunnel with the rabbit, taking in the slowly intensifying throbbing sensation coming from her moist crotch. Her legs became restless, and she could feel a twinge growing in her lower abdomen. A simple demand had slowly made its presence known more. By now her juices were flowing from her, and down her ass to the bed. With a look of wanton lust, she pausatoned the dildo, and spread her legs even more. With a deep breath, she pushed the vibrating wand past the lips of her womanhood and all the way in until the extension rested against her newly exposed clitoris. Rin gasped at the sensation of her stretching to accommodate the intruder, her stomach muscles binding up as well. Rin took a second to get used to the stretch. She may not have a hymen, but she was still virgin tight. The stimulation to her clitoris helped a lot because a dozen seconds later, she was slowly pumping the plastic phallus in and out of her tunnel, whimpering every now and then from a jolt of teasing pleasure, just making her want more. Rin's other hand busied itself with stimulating her breasts through her clothing and roaming the rest of her body, before it joined the other hand on the vibrator and pumping the full length in and out of her at a faster and harder pace. Lewd smacking sounds came from her cunt as she pumped the vibrator harder and faster, her legs becoming restless again, seeming to want to find purchase around someone that wasn't there. Rin could feel her muscles tightening, warning that she was close as her whimpers became desperate. Her legs now flopping, bent in the air, she pumped hard and fast until her whole body stiffened, and her vision went pure white, her body spasming with every massive explosion of pure pleasure. Unfortunately, she wouldn't be able to enjoy the afterglow, because her vision returned to the image of Karinai standing in the doorway with a blush that matched her eyes, and a horrified look on her face. Rin shot straight up in the bed with the sheet over her faster than the Sharingan could see. Unfortunately for Karinai, she knocked almost everything off the bod in the process, including Karinai's pillow. Thunk. Bzzzzzzzzz. Karinai went from red to white so fast that Rin was amazed she didn't lose consciousness. Karinai bolted over to the pillow, pulled out a vibrating sock, and ran out of the room. Rin had a pretty good idea what it was. Definitely going to kill Nei-chan ggggh. She reached down and turned off the vibrator, then pulled it out of her aching cunt and looking at the sticky instrument. With a light blush, she stuck it into her mouth and licked her juices off before concluding, I taste pretty good. With that, Rin got herself dressed and went to the bathroom to clean herself up, taking her new toy with her. November 15th, 6:30 p.m., outside Rin's house. Noboru had waited all day for Rin to be away from the target, and he finally found his opportunity, as she had just put Naruto to sleep in his room and left back downstairs. He revealed himself from his hiding spot across the street from the house and made a beeline towards it while staying as quiet as possible. After getting tangled by a few nasty weeds, he finally made it through the yard and scales the wall to the second story. Downstairs, Rin was cooking while contemplating the date she had been shoved into. Sometimes she felt as if she was gullible, or something. Oh well, it's not like it's a romantic meeting or anything, she thought before she spied the baby bottle sitting on the counter. Shit, I forgot to feed him. She picked it up and called out, Karinai-chan, could you go and feed Naruto quick? He'll just wake up fussing in 10 minutes if he isn't, and I can't leave the kitchen, she asked the genin who was sitting at the table. Karinai nodded, took the bottle, and made her way to Naruto's room. Upstairs, Noboru finally cracked the seal Rin put up to keep villagers, and the like, out of Naruto's room. Quietly, he opened the window and slipped through. He made his way towards the crib and brought out the picture. That's him all right, he thought. He went to pick up the infant, when the door opened and a young girl entered the room carrying a baby bottle. When she saw the unfamiliar shinobi looming over Naruto's crib, her eyes widened and she dropped the bottle to start going through hand signs. Noboru, seeing that she was going through hand signs for a jutsu, quickly went for his tanto and made a thrust for her heart. Karinai immediately stopped the sequence and, acting on instinct, put her hand in front of the incoming weapon. It traveled right through her left hand and into her shoulder instead of her heart. Well into the throes of the effect of adrenaline running through her, she quickly grabbed the wrist of the hand holding the tanto, holding her enemy in place as she did the only thing she could think of given the situation. She cocked her leg back and let it fly as hard as she could right between his legs. Had he not been so preoccupied with trying to pull his arm away from the genin, he might have been able to block the overly simple attack. But as it stood, he was clutching himself, trying to will away the pain, which was where his root training came in handy. Karinai took the window of opportunity to run over to the now crying infant, and snatch him up with her good arm and attempted to make a dash for it. Attempted. Noboru was blocking her path and quickly recovering. She was trapped, she couldn't do a jutsu with no hands, and she needed help. With all her will and the fear of what might happen, she forced herself to remember the gift of speech and screamed, Ararayan-sensei. Right before taking a sandaled foot right into her face, sending her into the adjacent wall as she held tightly onto Naruto to protect him from the impact. Downstairs, Rin was busying herself with dinner. Some jounin might have complained about being made to cook in this situation, but for Rin it was quickly turning into a hobby. She had never gotten many compliments about her cooking, mostly because serving food to the Inuzukas was like serving imported water to a dehydrated Tsunade. And after she moved out, she only really cooked for herself, if even. But now, she had two genin sitting at the table with sparkling eyes and drooling mouths, staring at her in admiration as she prepared tempura chicken. Being only 5 years older than the two, she could only wonder if this is what being the mother of a family felt like. Her thoughts were interrupted by Nanami, who looked up to the ceiling. Odd, it sounds like two people moving around upstairs, she voiced right before they could hear Naruto start crying and then a scream that turned Rin's blood to ice. Ararayan-sensei. Rin darted for the steps faster than anyone had thought her capable of, which incredibly doubled when she heard something heavy hit a wall upstairs, and Naruto crying harder. Naruto's room. Noboru was in a rage. This little bitch had the tenacity to kick him in the nuts, and now she was clutching the demon vessel like a vice. He quickly kicked her in the side of the head for good measure before wrenching her arm away, dislocating it in the process, and nabbing up the QB child. Right before he turned to the window, he noticed he didn't notice anything because the cognitive part of his brain was liquefied and leaking out of his nose and open mouth. A bluish-white chakra-covered hand palming the back of his head until he fell to the side, Rin snatching up Naruto before he fell. She looked from the wailing infant to Karinai and looked horrified. Karinai was a total mess and barely conscious, her eyes threatening to roll up into her head. Rin could hear the other two genin had caught up. Nanami! She barked at the shocked genin, take Naruto and follow me to the hospital. She ordered as she thrust the wailing infant into Nanami's arms. She checked over Karinai to see whether she should treat her here or at the hospital. Unfortunately, she had too many injuries and Rin was still low on chakra from training. She picked up the blood-covered genin bridal style and turned to Hiroshi. You go to the Hokage and tell him what happened. She barked at the still-frozen genin. He snapped out of it. H-high. He replied before shunshining out of the house. Rin and Nanami did the same, putting as much of their chakra into the jutsu as they could to get to the hospital faster. Rin reappeared a block away while Nanami was 3 blocks behind. As much as Rin wanted to run for the hospital right there and then, Nanami was carrying the reason for the intrusion in her arms and Rin knew she wouldn't stand a change in hell if the kidnapper had a partner. When Nanami finally caught up, they both ran the rest of the distance to the hospital. Running through the hospital doors, she made her way to the reception desk. I need a room and a second medic need immediately, she yelled to the nurse. The nurse's shock turned into a hateful glare when she noticed the infant in the genin's arms. Get out. We don't want you, demon love. She was cut off as Rin grabbed the nurse's collar and brought her an inch from her murderous face. I said now. She hollered with enough ki to cause the nurse to wet her pants. Our room TH322, she choked out before Rin threw her back into her chair behind the desk. She charged towards the room, grabbing a confused medic Nin and dragging him with her. Nanami followed quickly behind and shut the door of the room. The still visibly shaking nurse turned to the other nurse on duty who had seen the whole thing. Take over. I need to clean up, the wet nurse requested. The other could only nod dumbly. With Hiroshi, after his shunshin from the house, Hiroshi ran as fast as he could towards the Hokage tower. Bursting through the double doors, he ignores the shrieking secretary whilst running towards the Hokage's office. He reached the office and burst through the doors. Hokage-sama, he shouted. 3.5 sets of eyes shifted to him, as the boy had interrupted a meeting between the Hokage, the advisors, and Danzo. Hiruzen's annoyance towards the disturbance quickly turned into concern. You're one of Inuzuka Rin's charges, are you not? He asked authoritatively. The panting Genin nodded. Yeah. Some strange umbu-looking guy tried to kidnap Naruto. Rin-sensei killed him, but not before he seriously injured Karinai-chan. Rin-sensei told me to tell you while they went to the hospital, Hokage-sama. The Genin blurted out. Hiruzen noticed small amounts of tension in Danzo after hearing about the failed abduction. So Danzo, you still hold resources that should have been dissolved decades ago? You better hope I don't catch you red-handed. He thought before speaking again. I see. It looks like this meeting will have to be finished another time. Umbu, he called. 2 umbu, ox and weasel, appeared behind the startled Genin. Recover the body from the house, the Sandaime ordered the 2, who then bowed and disappeared to complete their task. Hiruzen leaped over his desk, picked up the Genin under one arm, and shunshined all the way to the hospital, leaving 2 confused advisors shaking their heads, and 1 internally fuming. Danzo, one of my best men defeated by 3 brats and a Candastriper, he bellowed in his mind before walking out of the room. Hospital. Hiruzen and his load appeared right in front of the reception desk and a startled nurse. Where can I find a woman with brown hair and purple face markings? The Hokage asked the strangely attentive woman. The nurse, hearing the description of the woman who quickly downed her coworker, quickly spoke up. Room 332, Hokage-sama, she supplied. With his answer, he nodded to the nurse, let go of Hiroshi, and went to find the room, Hiroshi right behind him rubbing his elbows mumbling something. Finding the room, he opened the door to find Rin and another medic Nin, pulling a tanto out of a young Karinai's shoulder and hand. Said girl had fallen unconscious due to the blood loss and head trauma. Sarutobi couldn't help but cringe at the Genin's condition. Seeing it wasn't a good idea to interrupt the treatment, he found a seat next to an exhausted Nanami holding a squirming baby Naruto, Hiroshi sitting in the seat on the other side of her. The observing crowd watched as Rin and the Shanghaied medic mended Karinai's hand and shoulder back together, flinched greatly when they relocated her shoulder, and nearly fainted/puked as they realigned Karinai's nose and mended her head and facial injuries. An hour had passed by the time Rin was done and the other medic left. Karinai's left side was swathed in bandages, her blooded dress discarded, with her head wrapped in gauze too. The bandages were more to keep the closed wounds safe and sterile until they strengthened to avoid reopening the wounds. The Hokage rose from his chair with Naruto, wisely snatching him up a half an hour earlier as Nanami nodded off and slumped forward. The umbu he sent to retrieve the body had reported to him 20 minutes ago that it appeared to be an IWA shinobi, which made him grow concerned that maybe he was wrong about his insinuations, and more importantly, that IWA knew about Naruto. When Hiruzen asked why it took so long to recover the body, the umbu replied that it took a while to clean up the man's liquefied brains all over the floor. So Rin-san, is she alright? The Hokage asked the kunoichi. Rin looked absolutely exhausted and knees looked ready to buckle. While she may have been training in the past 3 weeks, and her chakra reserves have gone up considerably, today's events were a little too much. She flopped into a bedside chair before replying, no permanent injuries, but she's going to be in pain for the next few days. Do you know who Hokage-sama? She asked the wizened leader. Umbu said he was an IWA shinobi. Do you have reason to believe otherwise? He asked, hoping to gain insight. Rin nodded. He had a red headband. Only elite jounins and its Tsuchikage's personal guard wear that color, meaning he should have been able to put up more of a fight than he did. His clothes didn't match that standing either. Also, the plate was almost unscathed, probably taken off a dead genin. Lastly, the tanto. She picked up the tanto covered in Karinai's blood. It was basically a black, straight piece of metal with a leather grip wrapped around the steel handle. This is a Fire Country design. An IWA shinobi wouldn't be caught well dead using it. Whoever he was, he didn't fight the Third Shinobi War, I'll tell you that much. So who would it be? She asked again. Hiruzen had to sigh, more in relief than anything. At least IWA hasn't found out, he thought before replying. I have a suspicion, but without hard evidence, it would be impossible to connect him to it, and considering his stature within the village at the moment, I can't do anything against him, the aged Hokage stated frustratingly. Rin furrowed her brows angrily. Does this suspicion at least have a name so I can prepare and avoid in the future? The Hokage nodded. After all, it's not like he was one to protect the crinkled old warhawk. I believe you already know him. Shimura Danzo, he replied bluntly. Indeed, Rin knew who he was. She was there when he made his interest known in turning Naruto into a living weapon. She had heard from her old sensei about his root program as well, which was supposed to be disbanded years ago because of the inhumane results, and more importantly the very lopsided failure to success ratio of the group's mission list. So Rin couldn't say she was surprised he'd want to get his hands on a Jinchuruki by any means possible. I'll tell the Genin to avoid the old mummy later, Rin stated her mind as she looked at the snoring Genin leaning against each other in their seats. Their conversation was interrupted as the form of Karinai started to awaken. She cracked her puffy eyes, which were black not 2 hours ago, and looked at her sensei. The thing Karinai did next surprised Rin since she didn't think about the prior incident yet. Is Ren and Naruto alright? She asked the surprised Jounin and smiling Hokage in a croaky and stuttering voice. Rin got over her surprise and smiled at the bandaged girl. He's fine thanks to you, Karinai-chan. If you hadn't protected him the way you did, he would be gone, Rin praised the girl. Karinai smiled before noticing the tanto that was previously lodged in her shoulder, sitting on a cart of dirty gauze and used medical instruments. Without a further thought, she grabbed it up. Rin looked at the Genin questioningly. Karinai managed to smirk through the soreness in her face. I think I've earned it, she answered humorously. Rin chuckled. I think you've earned more than that, she retorted. The Hokage nodded at this. Indeed you have, Karinai. I never intended for you or your teammates to take such an active part in Rin's mission, so I think some A-rank hazard pay is in order for your bravery, the Hokage stated. Karinai blushed before her expression turned glum. What's wrong, Karinai-chan? Rin asked in concern. The girl sighed. I was almost useless in that fight. I couldn't even see cast a Jijin Jutsu before he attacked me. The only thing I could do was kick him in thigh groin and SSSSSC cream like AACC civilian, and Karinai replied, downtrodden at her weakness. The Hokage put his free hand on the girl's good shoulder. You have to remember, Karinai, he was most likely a Jonin, and you are a Genin. Also, if I remember correctly, you are aspiring to become a Genjutsu specialist. Most Genjutsu-based ninja are long-range fighters for exactly the situation you were in. You were almost powerless in the fight because it was close range, and tight quarters at that. The Hokage assured her, and Rin joined in as well. Being a Genjutsu specialist is a good goal, but even I've found that over-specializing can leave you blindsided, Karinai-chan. I have a few things I could teach you to shore up your mid-range problems, and Rin tapped Karinai's tanto. Your new toy could be an excellent solution for close range. Karinai seemed to cheer up a bit after that. Rin hadn't taught her that much before due to her concentration on Genjutsu. Sometimes she felt jealous that both Naomi and Hiroshi synced with their respective teacher while Karinai was sort of the odd Genin out. Now, after the attack, Karinai could honestly say if Rin could teach her something that would make her a stronger kunoichi, who was she to pass it up because it wasn't her specialty? She smiled at the Jounin. Hi Rin sensei. She replied back as cheerful as a trauma patient could be. Rin, happy that everything was well again, wanted to wrap things up. Well, I'm sure dinner is a little overcooked. Ah yes, the umbu said whatever they put out in your kitchen smelled delicious, the Hokage interrupted, earning a sweat drop from Rin. So I guess we're gonna have to find alternate sustenance. Nanami! Hiroshi! Wake up already! She hollered at the two Genin, still sleeping in the chairs. They stretched and yawned before noticing Karinai sitting up in bed. Karinai! You're awake! Are you alright? They shouted in unison. Karinai tried to reply but Rin cut her off. She's fine. Now let's go get something to eat before I resort to cannibalism. Hiroshi, go get a wheelchair for Karinai, she ordered, causing the startled boy to snap at attention before flying out of the room. Why not leave her here for monitoring? The Hokage asked. He watched as Rin put on a scowl before replying, I'd rather not leave her care to some of the people around this hospital. I'm a fully trained medic anyway, so I can do as much for her at home as can be done for her here, she stated coolly. The Hokage decided it had something to do with Naruto and left it at that. Well, I think I'll join you then, seeing as I haven't eaten since lunch. I would suggest a little ramen stand that your sensei frequented with his girlfriend, the old Hokage replied, changing the subject. Rin was about to reply when she heard something coming down the halls. Squeak, 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 squeak. The bristles on the back of Rin's head stood on end as she heard it come closer to the door. Then her eye twitched and a vein popped up on her forehead. Hiroshi. I swear to Kami, if you think I'm gonna listen to that all the way home, find another one. The squeaking stopped abruptly before starting up again. It faded quickly into the distance before crash. They could hear a nurse hollering at what they guessed was Hiroshi. The Hokage and Nanami's sweat dropped before the grumbling Jounin turned to the Hokage. Ramen it is, she replied bluntly as she helped dress Karinai in her slightly tattered and stained dress. A while later Hiroshi came back with a sheepish look and a non-squeaking wheelchair. After helping Karinai into the wheelchair, she stood back. Alright, is everybody ready? She got two resounding and one stuttering high, the last causing the first two to look shocked. Holy shit. She can talk again. Hiroshi stated the obvious in a less than tactful manner. Rin waved the two Genin off as she got behind Karinai's wheelchair. Hi. Worry about it later. Food time is now, she stated. She was tired, hungry, and an Inuzuka by name, and she made it known. Streets of Konoha. The strange procession made their way towards the small ramen shack, allowing the Hokage time with Naruto. Rin didn't think it was humanly possible to pull off some of the weird faces he was making at Naruto, the infant giggling louder with each one. Rin had to smirk. Hokage-sama, I don't see why you didn't just take him into the Sarutobi clan, she pondered. The Hokage seemed to sadden at the question before he spoke up. I would have if it would have been beneficial to him. After my wife's death, there's been animosity between my sons and I. Put that with my duties and you have a clan compound with hardly anyone there at any given time. Then there's the problem with association. Why would the Hokage adopt a random orphan? Foreign powers would catch on, combined with the previous problem, and it would put him in even more danger than he is in right now. IWA finding out would be a prime example, he stated solemnly. Rin could only nod somewhat disappointingly. The Hokage smiled at the Jounin. Don't worry, Rin. If the assailant truly wasn't from IWA, as you believe, then the secret is safe, and the mastermind has just lost a precious tool, as he would say. He didn't have many when he was ordered to disband his organization, and I'm sure his numbers haven't increased significantly since then, so I doubt a second attempt would be too soon in the making, he stated. Rin perked up upon realizing something. She looked to the Genin. Should you be discussing this in front, don't worry, they know. I've sworn them to secrecy about it before they even came to your house, the wizened leader assured Rin as they reached the flaps of none other than the Ichiraka ramen stand. Welcome! They heard from a small brown lump of hair hovering from behind the counter. The group craned their necks to see a brown-eyed little girl smiling up at them. Hello, little girl, is the owner of this place around? The Sandame asked. The girl gave off a cute pout. I'm not little. I'm already this many, she protested, holding up 4 fingers. Already 4. You are a big girl. So can you call the owner here? Sarutobi asked the child again, this time getting a vigorous nod. The girl turned away from them and called, Tsuade. Some old beardy-faced man with a funny hat wants food, causing the Hokage to face fault and the rest of the group to try and stifle their snickering. A man could be heard walking to the front. I am Chan. What did I say about being polite to the Kusto Hokage-sama? He gasped when he saw the beardy-faced man before quickly bowing to the Sandame. Forgive my daughter for her rudeness, Hokage-sama. After picking himself up, the Sandame just waved it off, quite alright for a child and, sadly, quite accurate. So this is Ayam. How she's grown since the last time I've seen her, the Hokage reminisced whilst looking at the child bent sideways and staring at her father while he bowed. Tucci straightened back. Anyways, I'm sure you and your group are all hungry, so what can I get for you? Tucci asked the group. After getting their orders, Tucci went back to start cooking, dragging his daughter with him so she wouldn't cause more trouble. The group was left to sip their drinks and converse. Nanami and Hiroshi were bombarding Karinai with questions, and Rin and the Sandame were fiddling over Naruto and conversing about the incident. As the conversation went on, the Hokage remembered something. Before I forget. I'll send Karinai's payment tomorrow morning along with your weekly payment, Rin, the Hokage informed the Jounin, who nodded in response as she helped Karinai reach her drink. Hiroshi perked up upon hearing this. She's getting paid? So what do we get? He asked hopefully. Nanami decided to deflate his hopes. You get dinner, baka. She growled at him. Her attempt backfired. Unperturbed, Hiroshi put on a contemplative pose. A hard bargain. Throw in some dessert later, and it's a deal, he proclaimed at Nanami suggestively, wagging his eyebrows, and causing Nanami to blush a new shade of red before dumping the ice water pitcher over Hiroshi's head. The Hokage just shook his head. I can tell who Asuma has been teaching, they're almost identical in their flirting, he stated. Rin couldn't help but laugh. Couldn't be more true, Hokage-sama. I swear, when he's not flirting, he's trying to swindle me into a date. OFFF, found you. Asuma cut her off as his head burst through the tent flaps. Thought you could get out of a night of drinky, he paused, and his victorious smirk disappeared as he set eyes on his father and a heavily bandaged Karinai. He let out a resounding sigh before speaking up again. What happened? He asked simply. Rin told him the story as their food was served and Asuma ordered, figuring he would be there for a while. By the time Rin finished, Asuma looked a little disgusted and a lot more pissed. He looked over to his old man. Honestly, Pops, why do you even keep that gimp of a mummy around? All he seems to do is contradict everything you do and try to stab you in the back when that doesn't work. Just take him out behind a shed and slap an e-floating tag on his back, he suggested bluntly. His father was imagining doing just that, and chuckled darkly, but shook it out of his head. As much as I'd love to do that, I don't have the evidence, or the support. Until then, as the saying goes, keep your friends close, and your enemies closer, Hiruzen proclaimed. Asuma shook his head. There's also the saying, kill the snake before it bites you, and this particular one is aimed for your ass, Pops, Asuma retorted, pointing at the mentioned posterior. Hiruzen harumphed. You think a half-bandaged mummy is going to get the best of me? You're 1,000 years too early to be lecturing me, boy, the Sandame fired back, fueling the argument. The two stubbornly bickered back and forth, Naruto just watching the funny men, for 5 more minutes until Asuma's food came, prompting the Chunin to sit down and eat. This was Asuma's first time here, so he was pleasantly surprised as the Genin had been with the taste of the ramen. Damn, this beats free birthday bar drinks any day. Which reminds me, he remembered. Quickly finishing his food, he pulled out a cheap sealing scroll and unrolled it across an empty part of the counter. With a push of chakra, a cake came out. I didn't have enough money for a present, but I at least had enough for a cake, he stated with a nervous smile, after looking at the cake. Everybody else was too busy staring at the cake with a mix of blushes, bloody noses, drool, and a look of pure shock and horror on Rin's face. Why is there a naked picture of me on this cake? She hollered in anger. True to her observations, there was an expertly made, icing-scribed, picture of her naked form on the cake, obscenely straddling the cradle in the middle of it. Asuma nervously scratched his cheek. Yeah? The only bakery open at this time of night was an erotic cake store in the Yamanaka district. I kinda pulled a prank on the owner back in my Genin days. Looks like she got me back, ha ha ha. He chuckled in a cold sweat. Rin slammed her head into the counter, eliciting a happy giggle from Naruto. She was too tired to chase him down and kill him. And really, it was kind of poetic in her exhausted state of mind, a birthday cake with a picture of her in her birthday suit. Sighing, she resigned herself to the awkward situation. Just light the fucking candle so we can get it over with, she groaned. Asuma let out a breath of relief before smiling. That's the spirit, he exclaimed as he lit the candle that looked a lot like a penis now that she looked closer at it. Before she could protest, Asuma started singing, prompting everyone else to join in, including an extremely amused-looking Hokage and even Tucci, who found he liked this batch of customers. By the time the song was finished, Rin was a shade of red that put a tomato. It didn't help that the wax from the penis candle that dripped down seemed to have lost its peach color, and just regular white. I wish this day would end, she thought before blowing it out, eliciting a cheer from everyone. Asuma picked off the candle. Wanna lick the frosting off? He asked with a chuckle. A vein bulged on Rin's forehead as she swatted it out of his hand. And oh, I don't wanna lick the damn frosting off, she growled. The candle flew out of the ramen stand. What the hell is this? A male voice came from the other side of the curtains. It kinda looks like a penis candle, a very familiar female voice called back, causing Rin to pale. The curtains flapped as two people stepped in, both carrying babies. It was Yamanaka Inoichi with a wrapped bundle in the form of his 2.5-month-old daughter, Ino, and the other was none other than Inuzuka-san with a squirming Kiba. Oh. Here you are, Nei-chan. I was wondering where you were. Having a birthday party, I see. She drawled out as she eyed the cake. Is that appropriate for a celebration with such people? Inoichi asked as he tried to keep his blood in his head. Rin turned to Asuma with shaded eyes, prompting him to speak up. Yamanaka Erotic Cake Shop, only place open. Owner pulled a prank on me, he stated quickly. Inoichi snorted. Yuna's shop? What the hell did you do to piss her off? Inoichi asked. Asuma scratched his head. I can't even remember anymore. I think it had something to do with laxative, he replied shruggingly. Why are you out at this time of night, Inoichi? Usually you're at home now, unless the Hokage left off, prompting Inoichi to respond. Well, Izumi is having one of her off days and pretty much told me to find my own dinner, He sheepishly stated. What he left out was he had come home to hear Ino's cries being ignored by an irate wife who pretty much sided in on him as soon as he opened the door. By the time the dust settled, Izumi locked herself in the bedroom and Ino was still crying. After seeing what Ino needed, he decided they should both let his wife cool off. Some took her K after that. Then I found the bum, wandering the streets while I was looking for Rin, and decided to go look for you together, the three of us being parents and all. I have to give you your birthday present after all, she proclaimed with a grin. Rin nodded. I see. Wait, I'm not a parent, she argued with Some. Some pointed at Naruto and the Genin. You have 4 kids and you're not a parent? That's funny, Nei-chan. You're lucky too, you did it without stretch marks, she stated with mock astonishment. The Hokage put on a snicker at Some's remark, causing Rin's eye to twitch. She swung her head to the Genin. I'm not their mother. Isn't that right, guys? She stated before fixing her eyes on the 2 mock-crying Genin. Ka-chan. How could say such a thing? Hiroshi wailed with Naomi picking up where he left off. We've worked so hard just to gain your approval and love, she sobbed. Karinai even pitched in. Ka-chan, I can't reach my drink, she pouted, trying to reach for it with her previously dislocated shoulder. Rin slumped in defeat. Her wish was looking more like a pipe dream. Some patted her on the back. It's alright, Nei-chan. Let's have some sexy cake and forget all about this terrible day, she stated, receiving a chorus of agreement. Sim turned to Asuma, who had started cutting up the cake. Yo. I got dibs on the left breast, she called out. By this time Rin was foaming at the mouth anyways, so she wasn't really listening. The next couple hours consisted of eating Rin cake, a meeting of the babies, bringing Rin back to sanity, and all around a nice little celebration, as fucked up as it may have been. Finally, everybody parted ways and Rin, with the Genin in tow, dragged her ass back home. After cleaning up the mess in the kitchen, hiding the apparently crotchless, breastless unmentionables Some gave her as a present, and dragging Naruto's crib into her room for the time being until she could reconfigure the security seals, she turned to the reassembled Genin. We're taking a day off tomorrow and this night will never be spoken of, she deadpanned with a solemn look of death. The Genin didn't need to ask why, they just nodded their heads vigorously and all of them went to bed. As Rin laid in bed and thought back on the day, she realized that it wasn't as bad as she had thought it to be. Her last Genin's mental problems were starting to fade, Naruto was safe, and she could definitely say she wasn't as alone as she thought she was more than a month before. She could actually get used to this. Though, hopefully the days of birthdays, bandages, and burnt chicken would be a rarity. December 21st, 10 a.m. Training Ground 6. Rin closely watched the Genin as they practiced on the training field while she fed Naruto. With every maneuver they did, Rin would look on pridefully and proudly. Nanami went through her katas with her hands glowing bluish white. Rin couldn't be happier with Nanami's progress. She was using the chakra scalpel with as much dexterity as a medic Nin 2 years her senior. Rin felt that Nanami was ready to field test it. Her medical skills were not the most impressive, but they would still be a large advantage on the battlefield, and definitely were better than some of the doctors at the hospital. Her chakra reserves didn't just triple, but quintupled, with her chakra control rapidly advancing as well. Coincidentally, Hiroshi's reserves and control shot up at exactly the same time. Whatever they were doing for training, it was definitely showing results. She had asked them what their secret was so she could perform it with Karinai, but they both turned beet red and they stuttered while their noses leaked blood, right before they fainted. Whatever the hell it was must be very taxing. Moving on to Hiroshi, Rin could honestly say she was impressed with Asuma's training. Hiroshi's Dankijutsu style was in good form considering its homunculus roots. His strategic thinking was becoming sharper with every training session, and his trap making was that of almost an expert. Rin's jealousy of Asuma went down a bit after she had found something to teach him. November 22nd, the past. It happened after Asuma and the Hokage came up short on anything relevant to Hiroshi's Raiton affinity. Apparently it startled the Hokage enough that he ordered every ninja a bonus if they brought back or learned of any relevant information on Raiton. It still left them short though. That's when Rin came up with an idea. A conversion seal. A conversion seal would convert chakra into an elemental chakra from the base 5 elements. Usually they were unfavorable considering most people used them for an affinity they didn't have, which ate up chakra like an Akimichi ate food. But in Hiroshi's case, where the seal would be converting it into his natural affinity, it would eat chakra more like a hyuga. Of course, all the seal would do is electrify his batons, no jutsu or weapon-based attacks, but still a bitch if you got hit by one. After committing to the idea, Rin spent the next few days going through scrolls on Fuinjutsu to find the seal for the job. Many people think seals can do anything you want them to do, from cleaning your house to casting jutsu of sub-elements you didn't have, and beyond. And in all actuality, they'd be right if it wasn't for one key problem. Time. Seals are basic programs that use the complex array of simple kanji, reformed into much more complex algorithms, to do a simple command like seal, suppress, store, possess, and things like that. The arrays for the types of seals were large and time-consuming to write, and only the fluid movement of an experienced seal master could speed up the process for mass production items such as exploding tags. But this was only by a margin, which is why, until they made a giant stamp room, explosive tags used to be so damned expensive. Working for 20 minutes per tag will do that. Suppression seals were even more time-consuming, and possession seals even more so. People would argue that there were more complex seals out there like the summoning seals and the Shiki Fuin. Summoning seals were automatic and tied through your blood signature to the summoning scroll and cast using a jutsu. The Shiki Fuin was scribed by the death god so there was no argument to be made there. No, the most complex seal Rin had seen to date were ones that would animate sparing dummies. They took weeks to make and had the complexity of an insect's brain. So yes, you could make a seal to clean your house, but it would probably be the price of a new house. So, as it stood, Rin found the seal she was looking for. It would take 34 hours each, and some of the longest and tightest lines of code she has attempted at this point in her life. She sighed at the work involved, but she knew it would bug her for eternity if she didn't help out all of her charges in one way or another. Picking up the scroll, she went to go get the supplies she would need to perform the seals. Once she got home, she went to get Hiroshi, who was battling weeds in the backyard. Where did those things come from anyway? Training ground 44, she thought. Hiroshi. She called to the Genin, not wanting to jump into the fight with the vicious weeds. God know what the things might do to her. This was Jiraiya's house after all. After literally freeing himself, he ran over to Rin. What's up, Kaa-chan? He asked, causing her eye to twitch. They all were calling her that ever since her birthday, which made her name Ka-sensei on the training fields. She shook off her irritation and looked back to Hiroshi. I need your batons, she stated simply. Hiroshi blinked a few times before letting them drop out of his secret pockets. Okay. For what though? He asked curiously. Rin pulled out the seal instruction scroll and showed him. I'm going to spend the next few days making these. After they're done, you'll be able to channel chakra into them and they will convert your chakra into lightning chakra, thus electrifying your batons, she explained to a wide-eyed Hiroshi. You can do that with seals? He asked incredulously. Rin's nodded. Yeah, you can do a lot with seals, though it gets time consuming the more complicated they are. These conversion seals will take up to 34 hours each to make, she stated about the daunting task. Then she heard 3 words she wasn't expecting. Can I help? Ren looked at Hiroshi like a pair of antennae just sprouted out of his head. You want to help me with something that will take a whole 3 days to complete? She asked incredulously. Hiroshi's enthusiasm faltered only by the slightest fraction. Yeah. Maybe I can learn about seals too. Some might even be great for trap making, he said excitedly. Ren almost stumbled. I never thought I don't even like Fuin Jutsu, so how could I have possibly stupid Ren? Stupid, she berated herself mentally before looking back at Hiroshi. Alright, but you're gonna learn what I teach you, she said sternly. She still didn't like seals, so it was gonna be a bitch to try and teach it. Hiroshi eagerly snapped to attention. Hi Ka-sensei, he responded. Rin just shook her head and led him to the area she set up for the process. Flashback, and that was 3 weeks ago. He didn't turn out to be some prodigy seal master, but he worked tirelessly to learn ones that could be used with his skills. Explosive seals, restraining seals, suppression seals, exploding seals, proximity seals, explo-FOM, ding seals. Cough cough, damn it Hiroshi, Karinai shouted while choking on the smoke from the downsized explosive note trap. Hiroshi was laughing his ass off until Karinai pulled her tanto, and came back at Hiroshi full force, causing him to fend for his life. Karinai had progressed mentally as much as she had physically. He stuttered lesson more and more as she reacquainted her brain with the art of verbal communication. Her biggest leap though was when she was finally able to express what happened the night of the QB attack. Flashback, November 20th, Rin's house. Rin woke up in the middle of the night to find the bed missing one occupant. She got up and looked around the house, yet she came up empty. She went back upstairs before she remembered that she didn't check Naruto's room. What could she be doing in there at this time of night? Rin thought as she made her way to the door. She quietly opened it to find Karinai sitting up against the wall, Naruto sleeping, cradled in her arms. It would almost be cute if not for the sad, distant look the girl had, like she was reliving a bad memory. Rin walked up to her without Karinai even noticing, at least as far as she could tell, and sat right next to her. Karinai-chan, Rin called her name, shaking her out of her thoughts abruptly. Sorry Ka-chan, he needed a diaper change, she stated. Rin eyebrows perked up. Is that why you were sitting against the wall looking like you're mourning a grave? Rin asked. Karinai's energy seemed to totally leave her at Rin's question, sort of. There wasn't anything to put into a real grave, Karinai muttered sadly as she tried to hold back her tears. Rin easily picked up on what she was talking about and kept quiet, not wanting to push the girl to tell her. A couple of minutes later, Karinai spoke up again. My TTT team and IWR were one of the best reconnaissance teams ever produced, so Shizun out of the academy. Kento was great at TT tracking with Hi's Nigen. Ryuta was a natural L with his Byakugan, yet somehow he was always leading us into the thick of things, but Tomo-sensei would always pull us back out in peace. Sensei K kept us out of the exams for a year to hone our skills, yet we still lost in the third stage. Tomo-sensei J just cheered us up, saying we would get a T next time. We trained ourselves even harder, waiting for fall for the exams to come to Konoha again, but the tears finally let loose as she started shaking. Rin put a hand on her shoulder. What happened, Karinai-chan? She asked the teen who was on the verge of bawling. We were in charge of helping find Wawandi dead for one of the medical units. We were trailing a TS path, looking F for survivors, and we were getting too close. I stopped her to cast a concealment Jijin Jutsutsu. Tomo-sensei turned around and told me it wouldn't work, but they didn't, and noticed the KQB turn around and lunge at them with its mouth open. The next thing I remember was a wall of teeth in front of me. I could hear Kenta and Ryuta screaming in agony F from behind them. The next instant it raised its head, and it was gone. I remember looking down and seeing Tomo-sensei staring up at me, but it was J just hair,